some mates and unguarded comments just off.
Have you all been muted?
Yeah.
Yeah, jolly good.
Very much, Chair.
Right, welcome back everybody to today's council meeting, and we'll start with item 10, business items. The first one, the monitoring of assurance. I think you've all had a revised report and I think the main change is in area 5.6, where it should be £50 and not £50,000. Otherwise, I'll be talking about how I really think we're on the gravy train, which we're not. So can I ask Councillor Elizabeth Bowen to move the report, please?
Hello, yes, thank you, Chairman. I am pleased to present this report this afternoon. Just a few items that I wish to highlight. The purpose of this report is to summarise the key work carried out to date. This work has been completed by 2 monitoring officers. We had Susan Zeiss up until September of this year, and now we have Edwina Adafiniti, who is here in the room with us, socially distanced obviously, who started in September. And I wish to thank them for their hard work in supporting us during this very incredibly busy time. So the recommendations that I'm asking for you to agree this afternoon and to note are the progress to date, and to receive the report from the monitoring officer, which you have in front of you. To note the updated proposed code of corporate governance, which you will find in your appendix. And that has been supported by the commissioners, which is of note, and to adopt the updated code of corporate governance. So although there is no statute specifically that requires the monitoring officer to produce an annual report, it is perceived as best practice that this report is presented at the full council, the final full council. In terms of corporate governance, there are a number of key messages that are noted on your in your documents, bottom of page 50. But some of the messages from the monitoring officer which are of note are that none of the council's elected members have been found to breach the code of conduct for members, requiring an investigation or referral to the Standards Committee. And also of note is that councillors are trained in the code of conduct on a regular basis, and those appointed after May elections that are not actually councillors at the moment will also receive that training. So under the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015, the council is required to produce an annual government statement. That is called an AGS, and it is best practice for that AGS to include the code of corporate governance, and that will be signed by the leader and the chief executive. The code of corporate governance outlines to the council that it has robust governance framework in place, but also that it is being continually reviewed. This code of corporate governance went to our last cabinet, and as I said before, is highlighted in the appendix. There are some key principles of behaviour that are identified in that governance document, including behaving with integrity, demonstrating strong commitment to ethical values, and respecting the rule of law. Accountability also is another key statement. So in point number 5, the Statutory Monitor Officer's report, I can conclude that there are no occasions where the monitoring officer had reason to believe that there was a likelihood that the council was about to take a decision that would be unlawful or give rise to maladministration. Likewise, on standards, there has not been any informal or formal complaint that councillors had allegedly breached the code of conduct. Further down that page, we have the registers of officers' interests and gifts and hospitality, which our chair has kindly pointed out the change in amount to £50. And finally, we have information on the data breaches and information requests. So, in conclusion, this report, with the attached local code of corporate governance, leaves us in a very good state and legacy for the North and West unitaries for the future, and I am sure will be used as a template and guidance for both those unitaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Can I ask Councillor Golby to second the report?
Yeah, I'm happy to second the report, Chair, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Do any councillors wish to ask any questions of the proposer or indeed the officer? Got nobody at the minute. So it looks like that's okay. I assume you don't wish to add? No, thank you. In which case, you don't wish to add anything, Councillor Owen? No? No. So can I ask if council accepts the report, please? If just do this by acclamation. You're happy to unmute and say aye?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Anyone against? Or any abstentions? Okay. Thank you. Before we move on to the next report, I ought to explain to members that all the microphones in this room are on one loop. So if you turn one off, they all go off. So sometimes, unfortunately, we'll hear papers and other things, but we'll try and keep it to a minimum, but it is slightly unavoidable because of the system. Next, we have the closed down report, and I'll invite Councillor Golby to introduce it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this report is basically a piece of housekeeping regarding the close down of the authority. The recommendations basically ask council to delegate authority for the sign off of final sets of committee minutes to the monitor officer in consultation with the chair of the relevant committees. The law requires minutes of the remaining meetings to be approved as a correct record before decisions within them can be held to be properly taken. It is therefore suggested the authority for the sign-off of the final sets of minutes to be delegated to the council's monitor officer in consultation with the chairs of the committees. And as you can see at 3.4 of the report, there are a number of committees that are still to meet before the close down, and the subsequent process is outlined below that at 3.6 and 3.7. So I'm just happy to present the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think councillors will have had an amended report as well, which I think is because of the addition of the audit committee.
Yeah.
Can I invite Councillor Legg to second the report, please?
Yes, I'm pleased to second the report.
Thank you. Any councillors wish to ask questions? Councillor Andy Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask what happens if the chairman decides that there's an inaccuracy in the report? Does he change it and then he and the monitoring officer approve it, or what?
Yeah, I'm going to ask the monitoring officer to give her opinion on that. Thank you.
There were 5 days in which the minutes will be circulated. So if any errors are noted, what then happens is that all the members of the committee can make comments on it, and there'll be an agreement via email that the error can be amended, and then that's signed off by myself and the chair. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. So all members of that committee will be informed of the minutes before they're approved.
That is an adequate answer. Thank you.
I have no other hands. So did Councillor Golby want to add anything? Or?
No, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I ask Council then if you agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Anyone against or abstaining? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the voluntary sector grants. Again, Councillor Golby to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So at our November meeting, we agreed a motion regarding grant to the voluntary sector in Northamptonshire. And one of the actions was to report back to council at the next meeting, which is today, of course. So since then, there have been quite some work undertaken as a part of the local government reform process in terms of understanding what is spent where, and indeed what the combined contribution of the voluntary sector is from the district and borough authorities. You'll see from the chart at 3.2 that Northamptonshire County Council invests over £11 million annually in the voluntary sector through a number of the different directorates as listed. When it comes to budgets in 21-22, this council does not have it within its gift to guarantee future funding or indeed increase budgets or extend existing contract arrangements. But as we're aware, the County Council has been working very hard to build financial reserves and begin transformational activity in order for the two new authorities to give them financial flexibility in the future. And the Cabinet, through our roles in the North and West Shadow Executives, are committed to ensure the concerns of this Council, as per the November motion, are taken account of. Programmes and grants delivered by the County Council and the district and boroughs have been mapped as a part of the Future Northampton programme, where regular sessions have been held with representatives from the sector. Where possible, councils have been extending grant agreements and service level agreements, and some remain in the final stages of this process as we speak. So at 3.7 in the report, it outlines how the County Council has responded to the £771,000 allocation to projects that directly help vulnerable people affected by COVID, and a number of projects have been supported. The DEFRA allocation is shown at Appendix 1. So, Mr Chairman, I'm very satisfied that Northamptonshire County Council has acted diligently and responsibly with regard to supporting the voluntary sector, and I'm confident that the sector will continue to be supported in the future, with the caveat, of course, that the sector provides value for money and the right outcomes for those people who need support. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Michael Clark to second the paper, please?
Happy to second that, Mr Chairman.
Thank you. I've got a couple of speakers, but I've got a question first, and maybe Mr Scar would be the one to answer this. In 3.2, it talks about the district and borough grants of 300,000. I'm just slightly surprised that it's not higher. So there may be some reason or discrepancy why that's there. And I just wondered why seemed to be a disparity between the North and the West in the DEFRA grants. And I don't know if anybody can enlighten us as to why there's a slight discrepancy there in their volume. And does Mr Starr want to come in or his report? Thank you.
In terms of the district and borough grants, that's the information that we were supplied with, so I can go back and just make sure that that's accurate. I think the allocation between North and West was based on need and various factors feeding into COVID, so it's not an exact geographic split, but again, I can get a breakdown of how that was allocated.
Thank you. I've got Councillor McGee first.
Thank you, Chair. I found it difficult to hear the officer there. I'm not sure what he said exactly, unfortunately. There is a discrepancy on the DEFRA grants, but Chair, I welcome the DEFRA grants. It's made a big difference to a lot of the organisations that I support and try and help, so on this side of the county especially. So I do welcome that, and there is still a tranche 3, which begs the question, Chair, is there a timescale for the last of that funding in tranche 3? I do welcome this report because we're finishing. It's too late to actually do anything about this, but we should recognise since 2005 the big difference between the funds that's went to the voluntary sector before 2005 and now. It's a great amount, Chair. It's been cut, and indeed we've lost so many of the voluntary sector that did a lot of good. But that's in the past, Chair. We have to move on. It wasn't a waste putting that motion about the voluntary sector, and I'm glad we've got an answer, because what we can do now is take that forward into the unitaries. And I've already spoke to the leader of the Shadow Authority in the North, and I know there's a paper coming forward about the voluntary sector very soon. So I'm glad that the motion went forward. I'm glad that you've replied to this paper, and it's not been a total waste of time. And Chair, if I can have an answer on the DEFRA funding, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr Scar's answer on the first one was that was dependent on the information he'd been given. On the second one, he was going to go away, and the first one as well, he was going to go away and assess whether that was complete. And on the second one, the same, he would go away and just find the information. I'm sure we all welcome the DEFRA grant, and there is obviously a formula as how it's distributed, and he was going to go away and get some information, which hopefully will pass to all councillors. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. I have Councillor Stone.
Thank you very much. I welcome the report. Thank you very much for the information. I think for me, one of the most critical things I've learned over COVID is how terribly important community and the voluntary sector is, because they're close to the ground and can be very nimble. And it's really pleasing to see listed here lots of the ways in which the voluntary sector has stepped up and supported our communities with funding support from the districts, boroughs and the county. But there is an issue here for me. We know that for lots and lots of different reasons, COVID included, our families and communities have got poorer. And that is the reason why we've had to put so much effort into food banks, food clubs, cooking clubs, advice groups, and so on and so on and so on. One of the mistakes that I think the county made, which of course is too late to be undone now, but it's a lesson to carry forward into the future, is cutting funding for the voluntary organisation, which helped families maximise their income. That meant that we lost £7 million coming into the county, into the pockets of families, to help them become resilient and withstand all the things that subsequently happened. I think it's something that we need to take into the new authorities, this idea that the voluntary sector is not there just as our servants. They're not there as our servants. They're there as the community. You know, they're integral to the life of all of us, and they need to be brought in at much earlier stages in terms of planning and agreements about the distribution of funding. And we need to have a good mix, I think, of preventative work going on in the communities, as well as the firefighting stuff that the communities and the voluntary sector do so very, very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stent. I've got no other hands raised at the minute, so I'll go back to Councillor Golby to reply to the comments made.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for those constructive comments. Councillor McGee, I understand that there isn't a time frame and a situation where that money of tranche 3 sort of expires or can be clawed back. But as the Chairman mentioned, we'll get a few more details and we'll get something circulated round to everybody. Just to also acknowledge, of course, the huge amount of value the voluntary sector has given over the years, and that's been highlighted in COVID, hasn't it? You know, we've all got examples within our own communities of where groups and people have stepped forward to maybe fill a gap or just to act as sort of some glue between services and the people that need it. So we need to embrace that, pick it up and make sure it's still there, that it's still adding value as we move forward into the 2 new unitaries. So again, to thank the voluntary sector, acknowledge their need, but also that, you know, when we are handing out grants and things, that we do continue to get the outcomes we need and we get good value for the money that we give them. But I've got no other comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. Are we all happy and content to accept the report?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Anyone against or wishing to abstain? No, thank you. So we're on to the next item, which is the Northamptonshire Pensions Committee report. And I'd just like to say there is a small typo in 4.2.3. I think that should be write-off pensions rather than write-off pensions. But apart from that, can I ask Councillor John Eakins to produce the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to produce the report for the annual pension committee. As chairman of the pension committee for 2019-2020, I have the pleasure in presenting the pension committee annual report, which covers the key activities and decisions made by the committee during the year in respect to the Northamptonshire Local Government Pension Scheme. At the start of the financial year, the pension committee agreed its annual business plan and medium-term strategy, which detailed the key administration and investment activities to be undertaken during the year and associated financial considerations. One key activity for the year has been the continued work to meet the government's asset pooling agenda, delivering scale, strong governance, reduced costs, and improved capacity to invest in infrastructure. Access has a strong, effective governance and operation structure demonstrated with a collected total assets of 44 billion as of the 31st of March 2020. of which 49%, that's 21 billion, has been pulled. The 2019-20 financial year has also seen the continued diversification programme recognising the relatively high value of equities and the benefits of reducing its significant exposure to listed equities by diversifying into other forms of growth investments such as private equity and infrastructure and a flexible allocation of fixed income. The asset allocation to listed equities was 55%, fixed income 20%, and alternative assets 25%. As part of its administration function, the committee approved policies and strategies during the year. These included the revision of the overpayment of pension policy, risk strategy and risk register, the cash management strategy, and the communication plan. The committee also received updates on the progress of the triennial valuation of the fund as part of its oversight function at every meeting starting in October of 2018 and ending in June 2020. The updates included information on engagement with scheme employers, progress with policy formulation, training of stakeholders, results of the valuation and themes in the discussions with employers. And further to this, the committee took a number of decisions during the cycle, in particular reviewing and approving the funding strategy statement, which sets out how the valuation will be conducted and how different types of scheme employers will be treated. The Northamptonshire Pension Fund was valued at 2.4 billion as of the 31st of March in 2020. And this was a decrease of 96.5 million from the 31st of March in 2019. And this was primarily as a result of a significant fall in the asset values in the first quarter of 2020 due to the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. And I'm pretty sure that you can all understand the reasons why that happened. But however, the fund has subsequently recovered and was valued at 3.01 billion as of the 31st of December 2020. I hope this annual report has provided an insight into the work of the Pension Committee during the year. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have in relation to this report, and I recommend that this full council note the content of the report. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you for that. Can I invite Councillor Bill Parker to second the report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very happy to support the report. I think Councillor Eakins covered all the points that were necessary. And can I just, in concluding, give mine and the committee's sincere thanks to the officers for all their hard work over what's been an extremely difficult 12 months.
Absolutely, Bill. Sorry. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Any councillors wishing to ask questions of the report?
No.
Got no hands up. Yes, I'll completely agree with what Councillor Parker said. There's a number of things that perhaps aren't in here, things like McLeod and so on, that have and the pension service is a shining example of how shared services can work successfully. And I enjoyed my time with them, and they're very successful and efficient operation. So my thanks to them as well. Can I ask councillors to approve the report?
Agreed.
Aye.
Approved. Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Anyone against or abstaining? No. So we move on to item E, a report by the local pension board. Councillor, the chairman is Mr. Paul Evans, who's an employee of Daventry Council, but he's unable to be present. So Councillor Alan Matthews will move the report, please.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. I'm pleased to present this 5th annual report of the local pensions board. Just to get it clear, the pensions board role and remit is to assist the council in making sure that it's administering the local government pension scheme effectively and efficiently and complying with the relevant laws and regulations. And in doing this, I'm sure the whole board would like to mention that we're indebted to the support and professionalism of the staff and the key officers in the pension administration who helped to compile this report.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Eakins to second the report, please? Councillor Eakins, if you're there.
Very. I'll do it if you want to.
Chairman, would you like me to second it?
Yes, please, if you could step in. He's obviously.
Yeah, very, very happy to second the report, Chairman.
Thank you. Any councillor wishing to ask a question or any comment on the report? No. Can I ask councillors to approve the report then, please, if you would?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Anyone against or abstaining? No. Thank you. So the next item is the annual report by the Corporate Parenting Board. Councillor Fiona Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to present to you the Corporate Parenting Annual Report, but wish to point out that this report is from March 2019 to March 2020, and we have moved upwards a long way since then. So just to point out a couple of things, because at the start it indicates some different people. We now have Julian Worcester, who is the chairman of the trust, and Colin Foster, who is the chief executive of the trust, and they're well established. It's a permanent team, and they are moving forward. This report clearly shows the full scope of the work covered by the board and all the areas of concern. I'll not go through the whole report, as you will have time to read it, and I think we have been presented this time with a very clear and readable report on behalf of our children. But just to highlight a few items, in fostering, we had during that period 221 households fostering. That equated to 326 beds for children, plus connected carers were family members taking on the role. And we all appreciate that being in a family situation is the best position for our children. We continue to have a very robust media recruitment campaign, which is continually running on social media to recruit more people, as this is our best option for children. Adoption, during that period, we had 44 new people approved for adoption and 49 placements were made, and 11 foster carers adopted the children that they had previously fostered. With both these areas, we compare very well with our statistical neighbours. Children's homes, I think we'll all agree we've had some challenges in this area. However, we are robustly working to bring these up to the standards that we would all wish to see. And work is progressing well in that area. We are putting in place all of the Ofsted recommendations. The COVID effects obviously were not too bad during the March time of last year. It was just, we had no idea at that time what we were in for. We thought it was probably a short-term thing, but actually it's now gone on for a year. The effects of the pandemic only just touched on this report. However, then as now, the work to achieve the best we can for our children continues. We are continuing with face-to-face visits and also with the meeting parents visits where we can possibly, and we're doing virtual meetings with others that isn't possible to get to see. But we have a very robust programme to make sure that we are looking after our children and they are all safeguarded. I had just asked the council to note this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Can I invite Councillor Jill Mercer to second the report?
Happy to second this report, Chair.
Thank you. I've been advised in advance that Councillor Stone wishes to ask a question.
Thank you very much. I do want to ask a question. I want to welcome the report. Thank you very much for that. And it shows the journey that's been undertaken and the huge amount of work that's gone on. So thank you very, very much for that. The question I want to ask is about longitudinal work and how long we track outcomes for our children who've been in care once they leave our care, and if we have any data about what the long-term outcomes for some of our young people are. And I'm asking that advisedly because you will know the portfolio holder will know that I work with some very disadvantaged young people who are in care and who have left care, and they're refugee young people with particular challenges. And one of the challenges for everybody who works with them is keeping them in education. And I just wanted to report to the council that I've had a meeting with the Corporate Parenting Board, for which I was very grateful. And I just wanted to report what the outcomes of that was, because I was representing the organisation that works with the refugee youth. So the outcomes of that were that we're doing work with virtual schools now. We've had some input into mental health and into health in general. And I feel a bit more assured about that joining up of voluntary sector commitment to our young people with statutory services. And I know, for example, that the Red Cross are very keen to continue their clinics with us. And we've got the Refugee Council who, as soon as COVID is over, are willing to come in and provide therapeutic support on site in schools and colleges for young people in care who may benefit from that, and care leavers as well. So I just wanted to highlight, that the linkage of a voluntary organisation with statutory services can be enormously beneficial. And one of the things that we've been able to do as a voluntary organisation, of course, is lever in quite a lot of money to help support our young people over the COVID crisis. And so I really treasure that relationship, that developing relationship between us as a voluntary organisation, I'm talking now, and the statutory service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stanton. I've also got Councillor Meredith wanted to speak.
No, Chairman. I've read the report. I'm quite happy with what the report says. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have no other hands up. Did Councillor Baker want to come back on anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to say that our DCS, Kathy Hagley, is on this call, and she has messaged me to say she'll undertake to look out that data for Councillor Stone. And just to say that we all benefited enormously from her presentation that she did at the Corporate Parenting Board. And as our Chief Executive mentioned earlier, we are not letting this go, because already in the West, I've worked hard with them to put in place a care leavers charter, which has been approved by the executive in the West, and I feel sure will be the same in the North in the next few weeks. So we are not forgetting the care leavers. We do need to do an awful work with them, and it's a priority for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Can I ask if I've got a hand up from Councillor Brackenbury? I don't know if it's anything.
Chair, I just wanted to add that we had a discussion in the North about care leavers and how we can help care leavers just this morning. So there will be things going forward to the North.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. It's a helpful addition. Can I ask Councillor if they accept the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Anyone against or abstaining? Okay, thank you. And next we move on to the annual report by SACRI, and I'll ask Councillor Wendy Brackenbury to move the report, please. Thank you, Chair.
I'm pleased to present this draft SACRI report for 2019-2020. It's a statutory duty of the local authority to maintain a SACRI, which helps to ensure that the statutory requirements are met by our county schools. It provides schools with details of the latest national and local guidance and supports RE, and it will also help schools become aware of ways in which religious education can help celebrate diversity within our county and promote a more cohesive community. This year, there has been no examination results to report. Although students were awarded teacher assessed grades, these were not made available to local authorities. SACRI members have followed government advice to stay at home, which initially meant that meetings did not take place. However, we are now meeting by Zoom, and the last meeting of this council's SACRI meeting will be taking place, I think it's on the 23rd of March. This year has been a challenging year for schools, and I want to thank all teachers across the county. I would also like to thank all members of SACRE. We have very committed members who are all volunteers and are active across our communities. You will note section 4, consultation and scrutiny. It says that all groups have voted in favour of the final version of the report. This is not actually the case. It was discussed, but the actual report hadn't been written at the last meeting, and this will go forward to members of SACRE to approve. So, Chair, I would like to change the recommendations to, if I can read those out then, please, that SACRE annual report for 2019-2020 is noted by Council, and that 2, delegated authority is given to the Director of Children, Families and Education in consultation with the Member for Children, Families and Education to approve the report following consultation with all relevant parties, to be published to schools in order to improve the quality of provision for religious education and collective worship.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I ask Councillor Dudley Hughes, please, to second the report?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Religious education is so important nowadays, and never been more so, because it supports the very things we were talking about earlier in the meeting, about people understanding other people's religions and beliefs, and taking part in activities that actually make them so aware of other people and respect other people, even if they're not their own beliefs. So I'm delighted to support this report and the work of SACRE.
Thank you. Do we have any councillors wishing to ask questions or make comment? I have none so far. So we have an amended proposal by Councillor Brackenbury. Can I ask if councillors are prepared to accept the motion?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Anyone against or abstaining? Thank you. The next item is climate change, carbon management and environment. And can I ask Councillor Jason Smithers to move the report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It gives me great pleasure in updating you and the council and all of the members on the massive inroads this council has made to tackle climate change in Northamptonshire. As long ago as it seems now, but back in June 2019, this council made a bold statement in its continuing efforts to tackle climate change by declaring a climate emergency and committing to making Northamptonshire carbon neutral by 2030. This report provides the council with details on the key changes in the mitigation activity that has taken place over the last year in order to meet this ambitious target. Over the past year, the devastating impacts of COVID-19 and the pandemic has resulted in great many challenges for our communities across this county and the rest of the world. And we don't need to labour upon that, as we all know what's gone on locally and across the world. We see it day in and day out. It has made working practices very difficult for people, and people have remained at home, and has naturally resulted in a change in the greenhouse gas emissions globally, and a further drive to encourage sustainable practice and look to a green restart. In light of the significant challenges of the last year, this report also highlights that the council has remained resolute in its commitment to tackle the causes and the impacts of climate change, with activities continuing to pilot new schemes commencing with significant funding pots also being secured. From tree planting to help take in carbon, e-scooter trials to encourage clean and green alternatives to transport, securing 1.68 million to support active travel schemes, and even introducing zero admission robots delivering to vulnerable residents. There has been an excellent variety of work undertaken throughout this year. Looking to the future, with the LGR programme, 2 member and task finish groups have been established by the shadow executives. The principal aim has to be establish a robust framework for action, which will set out how each unitary council will support the environment and tackle climate change. Overall, this report therefore shows the commitment by this council is being fulfilled, even in the light of the significant challenges. And there is an opportunity for both unitary authorities to continue this fantastic work in the future. So that as Council notes the progress made to date to address the causes and the effects of climate change in Northamptonshire, as agreed within the Climate Emergency Declaration made in June 2019.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. Can I ask Councillor Mike Hallam to second the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When these once-in-a-generation events occur, such as we are experiencing with the COVID-19 pandemic, major social, economic and cultural change typically follows. And when you look back in the history books and the once-in-a-generation events in the 20th century, you see evidence of that. But what you also see is that actually those incidents that occurred, those major changes, were actually bubbling away beneath the surface before those conflicts started. So universal suffrage was an issue on the agenda before World War I, just came to fruition afterwards. Similarly, the National Health Service was an idea that had been mooted before the Second World War started, but came to fruition afterwards. So why is this relevant today? Well, it's relevant for me because climate change will be that issue that comes back when the pandemic starts to retreat, and it will still be an issue that's more important than ever before to tackle. And as I think most people recognise, one of the very few benefits from this tragic pandemic has been that a lot of people that recognise the climate benefits that have gone alongside the national lockdowns. Fewer traffic, certainly all of us pleased with fewer traffic jams, cleaner air, hearing the bird song a little bit more time outdoors, of course, and record numbers visiting our parks and open spaces. So the plan before us today, I think, is a really good legacy for this authority, in that it started Northamptonshire on that road to become carbon neutral and hopefully in due course carbon negative. Some fantastic joined up work has already been achieved. And that will really need to continue, because for me, this isn't a Northamptonshire County Council issue, and it's not even a Northampton Borough Council or a West or North Northamptonshire Council issue. It's an issue for all of us as residents, as businesses, for our young people. It's an issue for each and every one of us, and working together is how we're going to tackle it. So it's a long road ahead to our 2030 target, and the clock is clearly ticking. But we've set off on our way. We've made a really good start, and our goal and our aspiration is clear. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to second the report.
Thank you, Councillor Hallam. I have a number of councillors who indicated before that they wanted to speak, and a couple have indicated now. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For me, climate change is the #1 issue of our century. It's something that affects every single being on this planet. It's something that affects the way we live our lives. COVID is very serious, and we're having to deal with that, but it's a secondary issue really to the climate change issue. The target that we set to be carbon neutral by 2030 is, as has been said, a very bold target. And I certainly welcome this report and a lot of the good things that are in it. I'm pleased to see that we had a 36.4 reduction in emissions per capita, and also of 27.9 in total emissions between 2005 and 2007. But that's a 12-year period. When we look at it now, we've got 9 years to go to try and achieve the neutral position we set out. So it's going to take a monumental task to be able to achieve that. The lockdowns, as has been mentioned, has seen a reduction, but will that continue post-COVID? Some of it certainly will, and a lot of it certainly won't. And the other point is, within the report, apart from the monies which I congratulate the team on bringing to the table to enable us to accomplish some of the items to make a more green economy. Apart from that, it mentioned 20k allocated from our budget in 2021, which is infinitesimal. I did say the word. You know, when you consider the amount of money it's really going to take to achieve that neutral position. I think much more needed is to be spent, and I think that needs to be conveyed, as I'm sure it will be, to the unitaries that take over, and I wish them Godspeed in achieving that goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Stambra, you've indicated before to speak.
Thank you very much, Chair. And yes, and thank you for the opportunity to comment on the report. I welcome it and thank those who have prepared it for noting that particular requirement of the motion that the Council discussed and voted on some time ago. So thank you for that. There's a number of comments. I know that the tree planting that's talked about in the report, and the fact that County Council has supported the planting of 21,000 trees, and that's a start, but it's just a start. Wouldn't it be great, for instance, if the unitary authorities could find it within their resources to plant a tree for every single resident within their areas? 770 odd thousand trees planted across Northamptonshire. That would go a long way to addressing some of the target we've set ourselves. So there's a challenge for the new unitary authorities. Cycling is good, and the Active Travel Fund has been very welcome, but we've got a long way to go to make cycling a safe and attractive and enjoyable pastime and means of transport for all our residents. It's got to be about a lot more than just some cycle lanes on some roads. We need to make cycling safe. We need to allow people to store their cycles when they go from A to B and back again. We need to make sure that on dangerous and more busy roads, the cyclists are properly separated from the traffic, so that more people will take up that cycling opportunity. Many people own their own bikes already. They don't need to use e-scooters or anything like that, but they need to be given the opportunity to take them out and make proper use of them. And that's got to be beneficial. Looking at the planning for climate change in the new unitary authorities, I think it's worth contrasting the difference in the approaches. So in the West, the group that's looking at climate change there was the Task and Finish group set up by the executive of the West right at the start when these groups were being set up, and clearly demonstrates buy-in from the executive there. Whereas the group in the North was one that was member-led. It was set up following a motion to council. It was set up by Scrutiny, and it's going to report soon, but the difference in approach is marked. Finally, I think there's an issue around planning and planning policy that still needs to be addressed, and that is, how do we work the addressing of climate change into our planning policies as councils, so that when developers seek to build houses or build large waste disposal facilities, we can point to the planning policy that says they have to do that in such a way that they're addressing climate change in what they do. There's a lot of work still to do there for the new unitary authorities, and I trust they will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. For a minute, I had the idea of covering two policies by all living in tree houses, but perhaps not. Next is Councillor Stone.
Thank you very much indeed, and I totally endorse everything that contributors have made so far. I wanted to comment on a couple of things. During the first COVID lockdown, I live on a very busy main road. It was really, really noticeable how many families took to the road on their bikes. It was an absolute joy to see. It was really evident how many people had decided to do lots of walking. It was really evident to see how many people went out jogging. It was absolute delight. All of that stopped when the lockdown ceased, and it has not come back again during this particular lockdown. The roads outside my house are as busy as ever. So what do I take from that? I take from that where people have the opportunity that they welcome getting involved in very green practices, and if they don't feel safe, then they stop doing it. I think that is a really big issue. I note the amount of money we've got for the active travel is £1.68 million. That's not a very big amount of money, so it needs to be spent really wisely. I happen to be sitting in the middle of three initiatives. So the e-scooters, the initiatives that were offered and then dropped for the Billing Road, and what's going on with Rushmere Road. I live right in the middle of all of that. So if you look at e-scooters, I think they're absolutely brilliant. I haven't dared go on one myself yet because I don't trust the roads. But the way they were introduced was terrible and has caused a completely unnecessary backlash and bad practice. So I think we need to learn a lesson from that. The way the plans for Billing Road were drawn up and offered was absolutely the height of bad practice, it seemed to me. I don't want to offend anybody because I quite like the plans myself, but it had a backlash and a 1,000 signature petition was presented, which made the proposal inoperable. And I regret that. We've got the same furore going on about the offer on Rushmere Road, where none of the residents like what had happened and don't like what is being offered now. And I've got my own big reservations about that. I think putting orcas in to delineate cycle paths is a really bad idea. If you look at reports from elsewhere about the use of orcas, it shows that they are a hazard, actually. What I am getting from all of that is the absolute necessity to take people with us. We can't impose good ideas. They have to be generated from the communities themselves and from the campaign groups that are trying to help us look after our climate and our environment. And I regret very, very much that that hasn't happened in the area where I am living, because I know there are lots of cycling groups, walking groups, running groups, safer travel groups, all kinds of groups that really are desperate to be able to help design and promote solutions to some of the issues that we've got, and we surely badly need them. So now I hardly see any cyclists anywhere, and that for me is a matter of deep regret.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. Councillor Hakewill.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm publicising the pollinator strategy because there's already one oven ready in the north of Northamptonshire, and Kettering Borough have had one since 2012. I was delighted on the 20th of June in 2019 to second Councillor Stanborough's motion, and indeed to move a similar motion in Kettering and to have that seconded across all party. Totally concur with the comments that have been made, and by Councillor Smithers as well, and the elements within this particular report. Also pleased to be on the task and finish group in the north, where we really have tried to engage, although not as much as I'd like, the community. Our communities have such a rich wealth of knowledge, experience and passion on green and climate issues that we must go further to engage with our communities, not just once in every 4 years and hope we get it right from that time. I would also say, and I've made this point in the task group in the north, I drive an electric car, completely electric. I plug it into a 3-pin plug on the outside wall of my house. We talk very much about installing public electric points in different places, and they do have their place. But it should be said that most electric cars for most small journeys don't need that. But every house we build in this county should have an outside socket, a standard 3-pin one, weather protected, so that those who do have the benefit of a drive or somewhere where they can pull off and plug in can do so. Sometimes I think we get far too complicated with some of these things. The other aspect of that is that we ought to, along with Councillor Stanborough's point of view, create people's woods. In other words, where we're planning large amounts of housing, we should be allocating land, putting some footpaths in and planting trees, because we can do that. Very often trees get planted in the urban environment, lift up paths, drop leaves on those paths, cause quite a significant difficulty, and they need planting properly. But very much welcome this report, very much welcome the fact that everybody listening, watching and here today will take forward the initiative of the County Council into the unitaries. So very much supportive of it. Let's keep it going. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hickwell. I could recommend you an installer for a proper charging box. Councillor Fidler-Chohan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a couple of notes on this report. First of all, there's been a lot of hard work that's gone on by our officers and see Councillor Jason Smithers as well with heading this area. But there was one point that I wanted to make, which was around climate change. But one of the largest impacts of climate change on the county has been flooding. And over the years, we've seen an increase in flooding that's happened across the whole of the county. Much of my division has been impacted by this as well. What I wanted to note was that actually it would be good when we do these reports to be a little bit more clear about what steps the county is taking to fight this flooding and other impacts of climate change in this way. I know we've got officers that are working very, very hard. Phil Jones and Ruth and other people in the team that have been working on this area. But what I think we need to do is understand that this is a problem that's going to increase in frequency. And what I would like to see is, what we're doing about it. I mean, myself, Councillor Mercer, Councillor Strachan, and other councillors over the past years have sat on the RFCC, the Regional Flood and Coastal Committee. So this isn't just a problem for Northamptonshire, it's a problem for the whole of the country. When we are looking at planning, and we work closely with the EA to make sure that when houses are being built, they're not going to be impacted by floodplains and other areas as well. So how do we protect those communities? And looking at that flood risk strategy going forward. Just a point that I wanted to make. Otherwise, I recommend the report. I think the report's really well covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I notice Mr. Jones is on the call, so if he does want to contribute, then perhaps he could stick his hand, virtual hand up. Next, I have Councillor Adam Brown.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just wanted to pick up very briefly on Councillor Stamber's point that from the start, the executive of the West Shadow Authority has sought to establish a framework and a drive to make sure that we as a new unitary authority can be as green as possible and set what we hope will be the highest standards for a local authority in the country in terms of being green, reducing carbon emissions and getting the public and private sector to work together to combat our effects on the climate in West Northamptonshire. So I'm very happy that that's been picked up from outside of the West Northamptonshire bubble. As things stand, we've got what I think is a very exciting paper going before the Shadow Authority next week, I believe, and we hope to continue in that vein. So thank you, Chairman. I'll leave it there as we've got a long agenda still in front of us.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a couple of points. Although I'm all in favour of this report, there is one or two things that I'd like to raise. One of the issues is about the trees. 21,000 trees have been planted or going to be planted. My view is this. It's all very well planting a tree and getting them to grow, but they're not maintained, and that is a problem. If you take the area where I represent, we have a high proportion of trees, and they're not maintained at all. And we have some open spaces, which what we call the spinney, and they're just left to their own devices. This is not how it should be. These we get all the leaves fall on the paths and people slip and have broken bones or whatever. And unless the councils take up this of maintaining properly, then we're not going to get people to come along with us to help with the climate change. Really, it's really, in my opinion, it's all about maintenance. Unless the councils can maintain these open spaces, especially the spinneys and the areas and the woodlands, they're just left to their, as I said previously, they're left to their own devices, and they become a mess. And then people start dumping rubbish in there. And this is not just me saying it. I've got evidence. You could come round to where I represent, and I'll show you some of the spinneys with all the rubbish dumped in there. It's very hard to get the councils to go in there to clear this up. You have to keep on and on and on and on. So I firmly believe the councils have got to take an input into this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Mercer, Andy Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by agreeing with Councillor Stone, which is a pretty unusual situation for me. She's absolutely right. We have to take the people with us on this. And climate change is very similar to the problem with vaccines. We've got to persuade people that that's the way to go. You shouldn't have to force people to go this way, because you'll get pushback. But the second point is that this county is actually doing pretty well with our wind farms in particular, which are very, very high quality and producing a lot of electricity a lot of the time. They are there because the government has given subsidies and has pushed hard on this, just like it did in the early days of the vaccine manufacture issues, when it gave subsidies to companies to set up in this country, which was a brilliant idea. Well, we're doing the same thing with wind farms, but we need to go a bit further. And the government needs to be bringing in joined up thinking on this. For instance, the planning rules aren't anywhere near as helpful in this direction as they could be. Councils quite regularly, when they're granting planning consent, would like to insist on higher standards of insulation in properties, but daren't go too far for risk of losing on appeal. Secondly, the building regs are desperately in need of updating, and they should be helping us as well. So there's a lot that the public sector can do. First of all, by publicising good practice and good persuasion. I think they call it the nudge process, nudging people in the right direction. And secondly, by updating the regulations concerning construction to make them more up to date and more helpful for councils who want to encourage climate change provision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. I'm sure you're right. Design codes could do with having solar panels and ground source heat pumps within them in the codes. But no other contributions. Can I ask Councillor Smithers to reply?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I will go through some of the points that have been raised, and some of the points that I will say in the first part will answer quite a few of the questions. Councillor Hallam, thank you so much for your support in seconding this paper coming to council. It's very much appreciated. Councillor Scott, totally agree with you. Climate change is the #1 issue that is going to haunt us as a race for a long time. If we don't get our fingers out, we could be in real trouble. So I think all authorities across Northamptonshire and across the UK and probably across the world are waking up to the stark reality of where we are currently. COVID-19 has taken some resource away from some of these areas, which we will need to pay catch up, I guess, but nevertheless, there's still been a sterling amount of work done over this year thus far to deal with the climate change emergency plans that we have. Moving on to Councillor Stanborough, tree planting. You say that the amount of tree planting isn't overly ambitious. You may recall that in a report that was sent to Council in March last year, it noted that the authority had planted 250,000 plus trees across the county and in our parks and in our highways. So, you know, we are being ambitious. We are doing what we can do. And this will obviously leave a legacy for the 2 new West and North authorities as they come in. Active travel and cycling. We have opened up cycle lanes across the county, and we keep doing so with that fund that we got from the Department of Transport. And you mentioned about the environmental impacts in the north of the county. When we go to unitary, the north was always going to have the green agenda at its heart. It's going to be part of everything we do, and the Working Party is just an addition to that to help us better understand what members of the public require from us to deliver that for them. Pinder, thank you so much for your comments and support as well. Flooding, I'm going to defer over to Phil Jones in a minute about that to give you a slightly more in-depth view of where we are with that. So Phil, if you want us on standby there, that would be most appreciated. I'm just going to go on to the other two comments about Dennis. Again, Dennis, I've answered your question about the trees, 21,000 trees. We have planted, as I say, over 250,000 in the last period that we've been here. Spinneys and rubbish, yes, I have an area where I live where rubbish gets dumped as well, and as you're probably aware, it's an issue for all communities, and would encourage people to contact their local waste disposal teams at the boroughs or the district councils to have that dealt with moving forward. Although when we go to unitaries, it will all be under one roof, which will certainly be easier for members of the public to get a resolution for that. Andy, you make some really good points around planning and building regs. We need to think bigger if we're going to sort of try and get this the greenhouse gases down and so on. Councillor Stone, first lockdown, lots of cycling and walking. Yes, I agree. It seems there was a heck of a lot going on in the first lockdown. The roads are noticeably busier at the moment, which is disappointing. However, this authority is doing everything we can to use the active travel fund to open cycle lanes and utilise innovative programs such as e-scooters, e-bikes. I mean, for argument's sake, the e-scooters have so far travelled 250,000 miles since their introduction in Northampton back in the summer. So it is going a long way to cut down on people using taxis and cars to get in and out of the town. The Rushmere Road situation that you're talking about regarding orcas, orcas are used up and down the UK, and I've seen them in practice across the UK, and they give cyclists that ability to be able to go down the road without the fear of cars, hitting them, and it just gives them a sense of security and safety. And really, if you think about the cycle network that we're trying to put across in Northamptonshire, we're trying to join up networks across from one side of Northampton to the other. So there's a strategic route through for cyclists. And as an authority, I think we've done everything we possibly can with the limitations of COVID. That's taken a lot of time away from various projects like this. We've done everything we can to try and deliver on that promise to the people of Northamptonshire that we will give them a way of transporting themselves around without having to use motorised vehicles. Councillor Hakewell, thank you very much for your support, and you're always a wealth and a fountain of knowledge on environmental and green matters, and of course we will look to you as well to listen to you and take in your wise words, and bringing in the communities as well as and when appropriate to get them in to really give us their views of how they would like to see the green agenda moving forward. So, and electric charging points, we are working very hard at the moment to bring charging points across the county. As you will know, there's been consultations in your areas where we've looked at bringing in the VPAC scheme as well. So I think I've answered most of those. If I've unfortunately missed any, if the councillors just want to email me with their questions, and I will be more than happy to try and address them for you. But I just wanted to refer back to Phil Jones really to give us a little bit of an update on the flooding and the what we're doing to sort of try and mitigate this across Northamptonshire as it stands now. Thank you, Phil.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jones. If you'd like to come in here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Councillor Smithers, and thanks all. I think it was just probably picking up on the points Councillor Choham mentioned there. Linking to climate change, we can't put any one single event down to that, but obviously we see that kind of increasing impacts around significant events. You know, over the last 3-4 years, we've had May 2018 in sort of St Leonard's Road in that area in central Northampton. Wellingborough was hit in August 2018 and again, 2020, and again over Christmas as well. Each of those seeing, you know, over 150 properties flooded internally. Incredible events in terms of, you know, 100% of monthly rainfalls falling in a single day. So it's being able to sort of respond to those and working to that. You know, the stringent policies out there, especially over the last 5 years, national plan policy has come a long way in terms of helping to support and preventing development in the wrong locations. But obviously there's still historic elements there where construction has been sited in areas that, you know, wouldn't be allowed or permitted currently. So I think, you know, there's work to be done. I think, you know, it's a challenge there that we can bring into the 2 new unitaries, and obviously hope we work closely together across those borders as well. Obviously aware that water doesn't treat boundaries the same way that we do, so it's just making sure that we align, we get on top of things, and, you know, we look for schemes where we can do and support communities how best we can.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones, for your work. Councillor Chan, you've got your hand up. Is that quick, or can we take it offline with Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick point that for the unitary councils going forward, if this is an area that we could invest more into, I don't know, with resources to look into, it is becoming a significant issue. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So can I ask Council if it accepts the report?
Agreed.
Have we any dissenters or abstainers? No? Okay, so we move to item 11, Cabinet Business and the report by the Leader of the Council. So I ask Councillor Golby to give his report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as this is the last meeting of the Council, my last report, I'm going to read it to members. So today sees the last formal meeting of Northamptonshire County Council in its 133-year history. As we're about to welcome the creation of the 2 new North and West unitary authorities, it is an appropriate time now to reflect on the extraordinary challenges the Council has encountered and the phenomenal progress it has made over the past 3 years. Back in the spring of 2018, the Council faced a deficit of £35 million, next to no reserves. The fate of the Council then made headlines both nationally and internationally, and the outlook was bleak. Relationships with external partners were also at an all-time low. My group did me the honour of electing me as leader of this Council, knowing we were going to face some of the toughest times of any council anywhere. I then selected a cabinet to help me face that challenge and to lead the recovery phase. We made a public commitment to do everything in our power to sort out the financial situation and put the services of the Council in the best position possible as the Council transitions to the 2 new unitary authorities. This was a commitment that many outside the Council welcomed, but we know some found it difficult to believe and were cynical with an attitude of, well, we'll just see more of the same from the County Council, bubbling just below the surface. This made me all the more determined to succeed. Colleagues, I can stand here today and proudly say that we have kept our promise. Looking back over the past 3 financial years, by the end of 2018-19 financial year, the Council had delivered an underspend on its revenue budget and delivered over £30 million of savings without cutting services. Also, with a dispensation from government, which allowed the Council to use capital monies it already had to deal with its deficit, reserves were replenished to the tune of £39.9 million at year end. This year-end position of a balanced budget, savings delivered and reserves replenished, was a significant achievement which showed there was the right team with the right capability and attitude in place by both members and officers of the Council, who were all working closely with the 2 MHCLG commissioners. Financial year 19-20 was equally as challenging, with savings targets of £42.9 million, and we saw serious pressures from some service areas within that year. The budget was delivered again with a modest underspend again, without cutting key frontline services, and reserves were increased to £61.2 million, showing a year-on-year improvement. As we approach the end of this current 2020-21 financial year, and following the rebasing of pressures from the previous year, substantial reinvestment in some key service areas and an improved financial rigour, the Council is showing an estimated underspend at year end of £16.6 million, combined in £7.8 million from business rates, business as usual, and £8.8 million of business rate grant money. This represents not just a major achievement, but also a dramatic turnaround in the Council's financial fortunes in this final year. COVID-19 pressures have been met from government grants, and the remainder of the unspent grant will be given to the 2 new unit councils to support them to continue the fight against COVID. As it stands, the Northamptonshire County Council is set to close with a total of £95.3 million in reserves, made up of £31.9 million of general fund reserves and £55.4 million of earmark reserves. This will be an improvement of £34 million from the previous 2019-20 financial year and an improvement of an amazing £127 million from where we were when we took over the helm back in 2018. These reserves will be shared between the new North and West unitary authorities and will give them the best possible start in life. I would also take this opportunity to remind everybody of exactly what the Council has been working on while rebuilding the Council finances. And this includes leading as a central hub of the Northamptonshire response to the COVID pandemic, working with partners to integrate health and adult social care, repatriating staff and services from LGSS, playing a key role in delivering local government reform, delivering a children's trust, and all of this while doing and continuing to do the day job. Any single one of these projects is a massive undertaking in its own right, let alone for one organisation to be delivering all together. This is again testament to the staff and the senior leadership team we've had in place here, whom I think has been exemplary. This position above has been achieved by teamwork and the total dedication of members and officers of the Council, which has been overseen and supported by our commissioners. If you were to ask me what's the difference between now and 3 or 4 years ago, I would say leadership, people and discipline. I would like to put on record my thanks to Teresa Grant, who has been instrumental in making the progress I describe. Our senior officer team, led by Teresa, have responded to the challenge and have set a high standard for the rest of the organisation to work to. We've had the right people in place with the right mindset to enable us to deal with the challenges we have faced. The right culture of discipline and rigour has been instilled in enacting and keeping to the plans, again, all whilst dealing with the added complexity of COVID. This is a culture that I hope can transfer into the 2 new authorities. All of my cabinet team have been superb in overseeing their relevant portfolios, and I am honoured to have been part of a team that has truly delivered on the promises we made. I thank them for supporting me as leader through some very difficult challenges, and they have all been instrumental in helping guide the Council forward. We've been a very good team and I'll really miss working together. I also thank my Conservative group for their support and for the contributions of everyone through their various roles and responsibilities they have made. I'm so proud that as an administration group, we've been totally focused and determined to do the right thing, and we have done that. I have to thank our opposition and independent members for their diligent and welcome challenge, which has helped us to finish as a better council together. We've tried hard to be more transparent and to improve governance and share key roles like the chair and vice chair of Scrutiny with opposition colleagues in order to be as inclusive and as open as possible, which I see as a success. I also have to thank and acknowledge the role of the input of our commissioners, Tony McArdle, Brian Roberts, Andrew Crispy and Claire Chamberlain. Their combined support and guidance have been invaluable. Tony McArdle said from the very start of his appointment on the day he arrived that he wanted to help Northamptonshire solve Northamptonshire's problems, which has been an attitude that has made for a very open and positive working relationship. There are a number of councillors among us today who have served as members of Northamptonshire County Council for some considerable time, and I wanted to use this opportunity to acknowledge their service. 5 members have served 24 years, being elected first back in 1997. These members are Councillor Julie Shepherd, Councillor Alan Walker, Councillor Michael Tighe, Councillor Malcolm Waters and Councillor John McGee. 2 members, Councillor Bill Parker and Councillor Winston Strachan, have served 20 years, with Councillor Robin Brown serving since 2003, Councillor Andre Gonzalez de Savage since 2004, with Councillor Julie Brookfield and Councillor Andy Mercer serving since 2005. These contributions of public service amount to a wealth of commitment, dedication and experience, and are all worthy of our recognition. Later in the agenda, we will recognise the outstanding commitment, the hard work, dedication, loyalty and resilience of the staff of Northamptonshire County Council in dealing with the immense challenges the council has faced over the recent years. I would like to put on record my heartfelt thanks for the unswerving commitment of our staff in dealing with the council's challenges, and I hope we can all collectively support the motion. We continue to battle against the COVID-19 pandemic and all truly hope we've come through the worst. As I have said many times now, I'm really proud of the way in which Northamptonshire as a system has responded to the pandemic. Whether it's the great work of our volunteers and groups in the community, or how the strategic partners in the county, such as our health partners, police, schools and the voluntary sector have come together, the response has been superb. From the very start of the developing situation early last year, working as a collective with our colleagues in the districts and boroughs, Northamptonshire was quick off the blocks. I also firmly believe the foundations laid through the work already undertaken on local government reform in Northamptonshire put local government into an excellent place to respond, which is a credit to all involved. The mass vaccination centre that recently opened in Malton Park, Northampton, again showed our local system responding well when challenged. This, along with the other sites and the GP practices in the county, and the efficient way they have been activated is why we now see Northamptonshire in the leading pack of authority areas ranking numbers of vaccines administered. This is fantastic to see. So by default, all of us are members of one or two of the shadow authorities and are working hard to deliver the two new authorities. Vesting day and the subsequent elections are approaching fast. The monumental task of creating the two new authorities continues at pace and now enters its final phase. The scale of the achievement for all of the 8 Northamptonshire local authorities to be delivering North and West Northamptonshire councils in April, given the challenges the COVID situation has presented, is immense. Again, this is testament to the organisation and the leadership of the programme and the commitment by many members of staff in all of the 8 local authorities to make this work. So work continues on closing the authority down effectively. This has been a priority for me to ensure we close as well as possible, and I'm confident in the work that I have seen so far. In addition, the cross-party member group continues to meet to plan for the official close down event video, which you will hear more about later. So far, the group has had some good discussions, and all the members will be communicated with as soon as we have the plans firmed up. We want to commemorate the closing of the authority in a dignified way, given its historical meaning and importance. As time goes by, and as was mentioned earlier, I have to say it's such a pity that we're going to have to run this event virtually. Finally, I would like to say that as this authority closes, we have all earned the right to walk away knowing we have done our duty and that we have delivered on our promise. The past few years have been immense, and we have publicly owned the issues the council has faced. And now as we leave, having delivered on our promise, we should now also own what we have achieved. I wish everyone, both officers and members of this authority, the very best for the future, in whatever form the future takes. We've all played our part in the recent history of this authority through thick and thin. I hope we can all leave knowing we have given our best and share the optimism and ambition to make a brighter and better future for the residents of Northamptonshire. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. Can I remind members that we have 30 minutes for written questions and for questions of the report and the cabinet paper. So I'll start with the written questions, which you should have received by email possibly this morning. And the first one was to Councillor Elizabeth Bowen from Councillor Daniel Stone. Councillor Stone, do you have any supplementary question for that? No? Thank you. The next one was to Councillor Bowen again from Councillor McGee. Do you have any supplementary, Councillor McGee?
No, Chair.
Sorry, you only just came in as you unmuted. That was no, was it?
That's a no, Chair.
Thank you very much. And the question number 3 was to Councillor Longley from Councillor Brookfield.
Yes, Chair. The Councillor Jason Smithers has elected to answer this, and as it's within his sphere of authority.
Has Councillor Brookfield got a supplementary?
I have.
Okay.
It's simply that I did, in my original question, ask for a list of those assets that were being disposed of by the County Council before the end of March this year, and the values attached to that. We were told earlier on by the Chief Executive that we would be achieving best value from our capital assets, and it would be nice to see some evidence of that.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Smithers, are you able to answer?
Yeah, regards the list, this is progressing and would be dealt with before the end of the authority, and I'm sure that list will be coming to you shortly once we get the complete position on that. But happy to get that out to you as soon as possible, as soon as we're in the able to be able to do so.
Thank you. So that's the end of the written questions. So we'll now move to verbal questions, and I've got a number of people who've indicated beforehand to speak. The first is Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me the opportunity to say a few words at this final full council of Northamptonshire County Council, and to follow what was an excellent report from our leader, Councillor Matt Golby. I know from personal experience that during the best of times, it is a very difficult job to lead a council. It is a roller coaster ride of highs and lows, pitfalls and peaks. But with the backdrop of local government reorganisation and the pandemic, it has been even more challenging. As a council leader, you need thick skin and resilience against some hurtful, unfair and even malicious comments from individuals via social media or via the press. But Councillor Golby has shown huge integrity, resilience, calmness and true leadership, and has steered this ship through some very turbulent waters. Although our voyage is not yet complete, we are certainly in less choppy waters, that's for sure. If I had more time, then I'd like to say more about the pivotal role that our commissioners have played in the last 3 years, but I'm sure they wouldn't mind me concentrating instead on our staff, not just here, but across the whole of our county. I will start with our head of paid service, Teresa Grant. I think when Teresa took the job 2 years, 7 months ago, a relatively short period of time by local government terms, she said it was the only job in local government she was interested in. But that was before COVID-19. But as has been said on many times, it was the right appointment at the right time, and having a strong, vastly experienced and committed head of paid service has been vital. Teresa's work with both COVID-19 and the Unitary programme has been exemplary. And since the appointments of Anna and Rob, Teresa has continued day and night with MHCLG, MPs and the Treasury to secure the very best start for our new unitary councils. But above all, our staff, as Teresa said earlier, deserve huge recognition. We councillors stand for election to make a difference to our communities, but our officers work in local government to do likewise. For them, it is not just a job, it is a calling. Since 2017, I've really appreciated what brilliant and committed staff we have, and they have worked tirelessly across the county to keep delivering key services, from emptying our bins to giving support and help to confused and vulnerable members of our community. Our change champions have been brilliant. Our local government reorganisation programme team has stepped up to every single challenge that was set them. Along with our partners in health, voluntary organisations, the third sector organisations, and thousands of volunteers, we have stepped up to the unprecedented challenge that COVID-19 has presented us. Undoubtedly, that combined effort has saved many, many lives during this pandemic. I, and I'm sure all of our politicians of whatever persuasion, will applaud and pay tribute to our staff here at Northamptonshire County Council, but also in Daventry, South Northants, Northampton Borough, Corby, Kettering, Wellingborough and East Northamptonshire for their commitment, dedication and sheer hard work. Thank you for your courtesy and indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Rees. Can I remind councillors that this is for questions of the leader? Councillor Brookfield, did you wish to ask another question?
I have a question for the leader and just something that I wanted to say as well in reaction to the leader's report. So very briefly, does the leader believe all efforts have been made and will continue to be made to protect and nurture every child in Northamptonshire? And is he confident that the resource required for this will be is allowed for in both the North Northants and the West Northants Unitary Authority budgets? And what key lessons, can I ask the leader, what key lessons he has learned since his tenure as the Cabinet portfolio holder for Children's Services back in 2016? So that's going back 5 years, not just 3. Can we just have a resume from the leader about the lessons learned and what we can plan for children going forward? So those are my 3 quick questions, Chair, but I just wanted to take this opportunity as well to talk about those. We spent some time at the beginning of the meeting, as of course we should, to talk about the councillors who we've lost. And I just wanted to remind council today of those councillors who are no longer with us, who have I worked with during my 16 years on this council. And I just wanted to mention them by name. It's not an exhaustive list, but Councillor Jane Hollis, Councillor Richard Amos, Councillor Stan Heggs, Councillor Mary Butcher. I'm not going to list all of them, but I think it's important that we have at the end, as part of ending well, that that they are commemorated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, do you want to do them all at once? Or yeah. Okay. I've got now Councillor Stanborough. I'm going to take all the questions at once, and Councillor Goldberg will answer them together.
No need to come to me now. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hakewill.
Thank you, Chairman. Question coming up for the leader. Just really would like to say personally, it's been a real honour since 2013 to be a county councillor and to look after the interests of Rothwell Maudsley. My question leads on from there that my grandfather represented Kettering as a county councillor in the 1930s and then an alderman. My point and my question is, there are many pieces of memorabilia for the county council over these 128 years. I'm minded with the photographs as you walk into the old chamber, the books, all of those things. Can the leader and or chief executive reassure us members and indeed all those other members that the memorabilia will be identified and placed somewhere that future generations can have access to them? Thank you.
Thank you. You weren't listening to me on the radio this morning. Councillor McGee.
You're absolutely right, I wasn't.
Councillor McGee.
Chair, Councillor Brookfield covered most of mine, but I do have one question, and one of the councillors raised that the leader has to have thick skins. All councillors have to have thick skins. And since I was here and away back with some of my other colleagues and comrades that's been here probably far too long now, we remember the good and the bad times. So just ask the leader, I'll ask the leader, I don't wish to be controversial on the last one, but we need to be honest with ourselves. 2005 right up through, we had your leader who was a cabinet member that helped destroy 133 years of this council and was in charge of children's services, who we have now lost from a council because it was so bad it had no real political steer whatsoever. So it's not all roses. But what I will, Chair, because that's the last meeting, is I've never disliked anybody in this council. Never. Politics is different from how we treat people, and it should stay like that. So I will miss not having that opportunity to be.
Chair, is this absolutely essential, this? Because the leader's given a report, it doesn't really have to be drilled into like this, surely.
I've already asked the councillors ask questions. I'm sure, Councillor McGee, there's a question at the end of this, isn't there?
I've already asked a question, Chair, and I'm sure the leader can answer that. Councillor Jason Smithers, for some reason, doesn't like me. I don't hold grudges against anybody. I think people are all good people unless they prove otherwise, regardless of politics. And I truly believe that, and working together is the best way. And hopefully when we move into unitaries, we can do that, Chair.
I'm sure that's a universally held belief. Councillor Stone.
Thank you. Really difficult, this, because I really understand where the leader is coming from and why he's got that kind of triumphalist end of term report. I really do understand it, because the journey from where we are to where we were to where we are has been a very significant one. But I have to say that I am absolutely full of sadness. So my question to the leader is, would he say that the closure of the African Caribbean Elders Centre is a loss of service? Is the closure of Grendon a loss of service? Closure of libraries, Sure Starts, are they a loss of service? Is the loss of benefits and debt advice a loss of service? You see, I think the use of language is very complicated, isn't it? For me, I would say that is a loss of service. The other question I would ask is the gains that have been made in terms of stabilising the finances, who has actually paid for that? You know, because if I look at the world not through your lens, but through my lens, what I see are communities under more stress than I can ever remember in my lifetime. I see more poverty. I see more children in care. I see more exclusions. I see less respite available for hard-pressed families. In terms of the outcomes of the work that we all do, are those satisfactory outcomes? Is it okay to have a children's service after 7.5 years that is still inadequate? You know, we're public servants. We're here to make a difference, to make life better, to help our communities look after themselves, and where they can't, to look after them. Have we done a good job on all of that is the question. So I really appreciate, leader, you know, the lens that you're talking through, but I would ask you to appreciate the lens I'm looking at the world through. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I remind councillors we have a time limit on this item, and I've got 3 more councillors, and I've got to allow time for Councillor Golby to reply. Councillor Davenport.
Thank you. This isn't specifically for the leader, it's for cabinet members. So is that okay?
Yeah, there's cabinet questions as well, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So there's good news and there's not so good news. The good news is that I've had exceptional, and they probably don't even realise this, and that from Councillor Morris in Highways, Councillor Golby, always there for me whenever I've needed them for residents. So on the ground with the residents, fantastic. Councillor Baker and Councillor Longley. So that's the good news. Thank you for everything you've done for my residents. Not so good news is certain things that haven't happened in Highways, and I'm hoping with the new council something will start to happen. Although, maybe you can tell me that, I cannot get hold of the Highways programme after the 31st of March. It doesn't exist. And they said, we're not working on that. I said, yeah, but it can't all stop. I can't go to bed 31st and wake up in April. So I've got no idea what's going on there. The other thing is, which is really sad, I went to our library the other day and I saw someone there clearing it out. They were clearing all the books out, all the toys out. Now, the Friends of Barcotton Library have been fighting for it. Okay, there have been issues. We've had a year in isolation. We couldn't do much. However, no one told us. It's like we were ghosted, and it's been sold off. The lease has been sold off to the NHS, and we've been evicted. No one told us. So if someone could please answer me that and help us. We've got no library. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And the last one, penultimate one, Councillor Scott.
I didn't have my hand up at all, Chair.
No, it was one that was pre-informed to us, so if it's not the case, that's fine. Councillor Rumins.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to join in with the backslapping because I think that's, we don't need to state the facts anymore. It's unbelievable what's happened here. What I want to know is, considering where we've come from, and what I saw as someone that came in 2017, and I was only just a little wet behind the ears young councillor coming into the fold and trying to make sense of everything going on. But within a short space of time, a lot of us kind of started to realise very quickly what was happening. What I've been so amazed by is, because of the unitary transformation, there has been an incredible sense of urgency and an incredible kind of coming together of minds and concentration on the issues that really need to be addressed and sorted out in this space of time. So you've seen a transformation that has taken us so far in such a short space of time. What I'm worried about is, as we get to unitary and we settle down after elections, and some of us might be elected again, some of us might not, we might all get booted out. What I'm interested in is the worry around if we just go and relax, because we think, right, we've made it to unitary, we've done the hard work, and suddenly, are we going to just revert to type? And my question is, Matt, leader, what would you say to people moving forward, to the new authorities, to, as advice kind of, I suppose, on how they can continue the work that's been done to drive these services up and up and up and make sure that we provide the best services that we ever could wish for the residents of Northamptonshire?
Thank you. Looking around the room, you're still a young councillor, Councillor Rumins. Councillor Golby, if you'd like to respond to all this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to say thank you for the comments by Councillor Griffiths, and that recognition of the senior leadership team and all the staff, and we'll talk about that more in a moment in the motion. But Councillor Brookfield, so children's services and the future, how is it looking? Well, frankly, I'd say we've never had a better team in place in children's services. And the fact is, we over all of those comments, it's right to recognise how far we've come, but also, it hasn't all been a bed of roses, as Councillor McGee mentions there. But the focus and dedication of everybody, whether that's me, my cabinet team, the officers, backbenchers, people on scrutiny, everybody across this organisation has given their all, really, to try and move this whole place forward. So I think it is right to recognise that. And, I didn't mean to be triumphalist, but you've got to recognise the immense amount of work. And Martin, as leader, you said how difficult that is to be a leader in everything you deal with. It's more than 24/7. You live, breathe, have the sleepless nights and everything else about it. So I'll make no apology for what I said in my little speech there. But Councillor Brookfield, we've never had a better team in place, and we've got to keep our foot on the gas across everything. Sam's comments at the end, it's about culture, about discipline, and about having the right people in place, as I said in my little report. And we've had that, and we've got that in spades now. And one thing that is incumbent upon all of us as members is to learn and heed these lessons from the past, to make sure that nothing that Northamptonshire went through 5-6 years ago happens again in all areas, whether that's children's services, adults, the way we maintain the roads, how we're going to be collecting bins in planning and everything else. We've got a massive opportunity, backed up with a wealth of experience, whether that's through officers or members, to make things better for the residents in the future. Councillor Hakewell's point about the regalia, that regalia I believe all stays in place until we go through past vesting day. I think on at the event, there's going to be some of the chains and things on show. In fact, our little working group did discuss this last week, and I think everything is going to stay in place. The pictures are going to remain hanging, and then there'll be some decisions made about what is the best and the most dignified way of dealing with all that stuff. So I did mention about Councillor McGee. It hasn't all been a bed of roses. Again, you know, we've all been here. We've all done our best, and you can't decry that, I don't think. And in terms of my role, well, somebody's got to stand up and take it on. Frankly, somebody's got to do it, and it has been probably the hardest thing I've ever done, and I will ever do. But I'm proud that we've seen this thing through, and I'm proud of where we've got to. So, you know, I'm happy with where we are. Councillor Stone talks about the services. Well, you know, we've done the best thing we can with what we've got to do that with. You know, we've had a finite amount of money, and going back to the start with Councillor Brookfield, one thing I have learned, it's not just about money. It's about how we spend that money, how we respond to the challenges, how we look to transform and adapt to the challenges rather than just spend more money. And I think that was where perhaps Children's Services back a few years ago was going wrong. So, you know, and on Councillor Stone's point, and I'm jumping around a bit, I know, but they're all linked. It's about doing everything we can with what we've got to do it with. And yes, we've been through some tough times, but you know, we've done the best we possibly can. Councillor Brookfield, thank you for acknowledging. You know, I always try and help you out when you contact me. You know, and again, we've dealt with the challenges in the best way we possibly can. So, Sam, what would you leave? What would I say? Again, it's about people, teamwork, and culture, and that starts at the top, and it's got to permeate all the way through. And you've only got to look at, and I always think of Anna. Is she in the room still? I think she's left, actually. You know, in terms of the transformation work that Anna led on here, serves as a template for how a council should run and operate a directorate, getting that line of sight of the finances that run as a golden thread from the top to the bottom to where every penny is being spent, and the discipline. You know, I think of Malcolm in our cabinet group, and just talking about discipline, and that's what Teresa's brought in, the way Barry and Ian Duncan set that and instilled that from day one. So the difference is people, teamwork, and culture, and we've got to keep that going. If I did have any regrets, it's probably the fact that you can't always give people the answer they want to hear. You know, we all have that job as politicians, whether people come to us from within our communities or it's in a role like I have. Sometimes you can't always give people what they want, but you know, we try our best. And you can only give your best. And I think that's all we've done. And that's all I've done, all my cabinet's done. And I know the officers have all done and tried to give their best. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Perhaps if there are any other matters that other cabinet members had, I think there was a question of Councillor Smithers, but.
Yes, around the highways programme, was it not, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
So the highways programme for next year is in development, and it's made up of various different schemes and interventions, not of all which have been brought together as one programme as of yet. It's quite normal for this time of the year, as one would expect, and work certainly won't stop on the 1st of April 2021. It will continue to carry on, and scheduled works will continue as well. Sorry, beg pardon, I heard something in.
I'm not sure. Go on, carry on.
That's it. That's pretty much just to say that it will continue.
Okay, thank you. And I think, Councillor Bowen, did you want to talk about the library?
Yeah, I've come up here because of the speaker. Right, as far as the library is concerned, so this is for Julie Davenport. We haven't closed the library yet, officially. What's going to happen, all being well, is that there will continue to be a small library when COVID restrictions lift. It will be in a different format, and there will be other services that are offered in and around your area within that community. So it hasn't closed, so you'll know that a lot of the libraries, Julie, have actually ceased to operate at the moment because of those COVID restrictions. And of course, at any time, you can call me, email me, or or contact me should you require clarification on that. Thank you.
Can I have a supplementary, please? Can I? Because I've heard nothing from anyone, none of us did, about it closing. And I went in and they've literally taken all the books out, sent them to other libraries, they've taken all the toys out, donated them. So I'm not seeing what you're saying.
Okay, well, thank you for the feedback. What I would say is I didn't know that those books had been removed, but they would naturally go to other libraries as there's a movement around. There are many libraries in this county, and so they wouldn't necessarily all stay in one place. There is a system for moving them around. However, what I'm saying to you is that moving forward, there will be some form of community support in terms of that library and information service. At the moment, because of the social restrictions, we can't operate. But as I say, any queries, you can contact me direct and I'll be happy to help. But the library service has not closed completely down at the moment. It is currently on hold because of the COVID restrictions.
Thank you. Thank you. If you've got a further points, it's perhaps best take them up direct with the portfolio holder. Hopefully that's answered all the questions. We now have a special guest hot-footing it from Croydon, where he's found another hotspot to deal with. Commissioner Tony McArdle would like to address the meeting, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Not quite hot-footing it from Croydon, not in a physical sense anyway, but thank you for allowing me to break into your agenda in order to just have a few words. I listened with interest to all of the meetings so far, and I'm very conscious it's a very unusual meeting. You are ranging from what the Lord Lieutenant was talking about when he introduced the session this morning, to activities which have taken place over the whole 47 years of the existence of Northamptonshire County Council, right down to specific issues which are of concern today about operational changes and so forth. And that's quite understandable. My lens for this one, to borrow a phrase that was used a few minutes ago, my lens for this one is clearly the last 3 years. And I wanted to take an opportunity, not least because this is the last opportunity to say goodbye, on behalf of myself, my colleague Brian Roberts and the team, including Chrissy Ferrugia and Simon Deacon, who've been immensely supportive to us throughout the entire time that we've been here and have undertaken a range of the tasks on their own volition, as well as those that Brian and I have engaged with as commissioners. So it is goodbye. The reflection over the 3 years, I think, is important nonetheless, and for everyone, regardless of their political views, I think to be engaged with and supportive of, which is that compared to 3 years ago, the authority is in a considerable better place. Of course, it's not perfect. Of course, there are decisions that have been made that some people would have preferred to have been made differently. Of course, there are some services that have been changed, some stopped, reduced, some increased, indeed. But that's natural. These things happen over the course of a period of time in any authority. What I can say with a great degree of certainty, and I would say to all of you, is that comparing this authority now to where it was 3 years ago is it's in a hugely different place. It's in an extraordinarily different place. And that's happened for a variety of reasons. Of course, I and my colleagues have been pleased to have been part of that. But we think all of you should be proud of that, because all of you as members and officers of this authority have had to absorb the fact that, and it was very clear, it was on the newspapers and front pages and television screens and in very many countries around the world, good grief, that this was the most dysfunctional council in England, that it was the first council to have gone insolvent since 1974. Yeah, all of these things, terrible, terrible headlines, terrible thing to attract to the people of Northamptonshire and to do to the people of Northamptonshire, and it was all true. You're not insolvent now. You heard from Barry earlier on about the amount of money that you're going to leave in the bank to the junior authorities. You're not producing dysfunctional services. Of course, some of them could be better because it's only been 3 years, and from the place you've got to, there is still a long way to go. But my goodness me, they are much better in terms of what the experience of people in Northamptonshire is in respect of those services than they were 3 years ago. And that is something which all of you can take pride in, whether you're in the executive, whether you're a backbencher in the administration, whether you are an opposition councillor, because everyone has contributed to the discussions, to the debates, to the way forward. because it was so bad 3 years ago, I think it is worth just remembering that when Brian and I were sent in here, it was an intervention, only the fourth one that's ever taken place. And the intention, the expectation of the Secretary of State is that we would be issuing things called directions, using powers that have been taken off you and given to us in order to make things happen, as had been the case in other interventions. In the 3 years that we've been here, we've not issued a single direction. And I think that is hugely important in the context in which we arrived. Matt knows, because we had this conversation on day one, and many of other you will know as well, that he said to us that he wanted, on behalf of the council, not just on behalf of his party or his group, but on behalf of the council, to restore the reputation of Northamptonshire and to do things properly. And we said to him at the time, well, that's fine. The only way that works is if we can be involved, because we have a responsibility to the Secretary of State, in everything you're doing from the start, so that we can, if not issue directions, at least be clear about what we believe is right and to set some parameters within which the council should and could go ahead and conduct its business in a way every other autonomous local authority in this country does. We did, to be honest, and Matt again knows this very well, say at the same time, but that only lasts as long as the first time it goes wrong, because the first time it goes wrong, then we will be issuing directions, because what we can't do as commissioners is be in a position whereby we choose not to use our powers and then something happens that is different to what we would have in an important matter, not allowed to take place. And it's held. That is held. It's been difficult, it's been bumpy, it's been up and down. But the decisions of the last 3 years have been yours. The work carried out by your officers to affect them have been yours. We've been pleased to advise and guide and support and help throughout all of that time. And we are pleased now to leave the authority in as good a state as it is, which compared to 3 years ago is a much better place. And again, say, you should be very proud of what you're leaving behind over 47 years and indeed over the last 3. You're leaving it in good order. I think there are good prospects for the 2 new authorities. We've enjoyed the time we've been with you. We've enjoyed, to pick up John McGee's point, we've enjoyed the interactions we've had, the people we've been able to talk with, the good conversations we've been able to have, and the slightly heated conversations on occasions that we've had to have. But that's all been part of the rough and tumble of getting to the point that we are today. So we thank you, both Brian and I. Brian's sadly unable to be with us, he's on leave today, but we've enjoyed our time. We felt fully engaged in our time, and we'd like to share in you the pride in the point that you've got to. So thank you, Chairman. Thank you to all the members of the council, and thank you to all the senior officers. I should say a little bit more about the officers. One thing we did do, of course, is get involved in choosing some of your chief officers, because that was our responsibility. But again, we did it in concert with you. I'm absolutely delighted with the officers that we've left to you, that have led you through the last few years. They are amongst the best senior officers that we can find in this country. I think they've proven themselves to be amongst the best senior officers you can find in this country. And I know, whereas you will go on to the 2 new authorities, some of them will go on to other places and do other things. And I think they should go with your very best wishes, because I think they have helped you greatly and get to the place you are. So thank you on behalf of all of us, and goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. I think Councillor Golby would like to respond just briefly to you.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. And I don't know if you heard my my report that I read out, but I did make a point of thanking you, Brian, Andrew Christie and Claire Chamberlain, who have been part of the challenge. We've all worked together. And of course, you need to mention Chrissy and Simon and Lauren from the DFE commissioners. But yeah, just to thank you, Tony, for that work, keeping to that word. You know, we did have that conversation. I think I met you the minute you walked in and said, look, you know, we want to try and help be a part of the solution here. And you kept to that word. And, you know, here we are 3 years later, having gone down that long and windy and sometimes bumpy road. But just thank you, Tony, for everything you've done for us, and wish you well in your endeavours, as interesting and varied as they may be in the future as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can I ask Council to note the report and the presentations and the questions and answers provided, and accept them, please?
Noted, Chair, noted.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Anyone dissenting or abstaining? No? Okay, thank you. So the next is scrutiny business, the annual report from the and I'm very pleased to be able to welcome Councillor Mick Scrimshaw to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. As Chair of the Scrutiny Committee, actually, I'd simply like to welcome, no, that's the wrong word, to introduce Councillor Stamborough, one of the Vice Chairs who will present this report instead of me, and I'll briefly explain why. You'll remember when the County Council brought in its new scrutiny arrangements a couple of years ago, it was set up with a chair and 3 vice chairs from all of the different political groups. And you'll have heard me say before about speak about the benefits of this arrangement. I believe that setup has helped create a cross-party working approach to scrutiny that's helped the function enormously, and therefore gone on to help, dare I say, the council as a whole. And for any councillors who have ambitions about going on to new councils in the future, I'd strongly recommend that they think about that type of approach for perhaps their new councils in the future, although of course I'll leave that entirely up to you. At the outset of that new arrangement, we also spoke about how we'd like to share the work and responsibility between the various vice chairs, and it's a credit, I think, to all the vice chairs that they've done this by working constructively together the last couple of years, and that's one of the reasons then that Chris is presenting the report today. But there is another. I'm sure most members know that I'm currently seriously ill, and I'm afraid that, yes, this has had an effect on the time and effort I've been able to put into my private work and my council work, and there's no doubt that I am perhaps a little out of the loop because of that. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank not only the committee as a whole, but in particular the vice chairs for helping to keep things running smoothly, and it's for this reason that Councillor Stamborough is probably in a much better position today to present this particular report, and I'd like therefore, Chairman, to pass over to him. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Scrimshaw, and wish you well as much as possible. And I've sat on scrutiny, and you've been absolutely excellent and impartial scrutiny chairman, and done to me a very good job. But yes, if I could introduce Councillor Stamborough to propose the report, then please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Mick, for those kind words. I want to start by pointing you to the first substantive paragraph of this report, which begins, Council will note that the last 3 overview and scrutiny committee meetings, etc. And just say that for me, it has been an absolute pleasure to be led by Mick as chair of scrutiny. I think he's done a fantastic job. I don't think anyone could have done a better job as chair of scrutiny. And that paragraph concludes by saying exactly that. And it has been an experience which I've enjoyed tremendously. So thank you very much, Mick. Also, thank you to the people who've served as vice chairs of scrutiny, Julie Davenport, Jim Hakewill, and Victoria Perry. I think I've covered everybody. It's been a team effort with the chair, with Mick, and that has been part, I think, of the success that we think we've made of scrutiny. Let's hope other people think so too. Also thank all members of the scrutiny committee, past and present, who've served, and all the other scrutiny committees that the county council has had in its time, and all the officers and members of the public and experts who've appeared before those scrutiny committees over the years. You all contributed to what scrutiny did. Moving on, you've got the report. It sets out well what scrutiny has tried to do recently. I don't propose to dwell on that too much. There's certainly been some good things that scrutiny has done in the last 2 to 3 years. I think one in particular, thinking back to a report that was done on social worker recruitment and retention, and I think that was a really good piece of work. And 1 or 2 things that didn't quite come to fruition. So just before the reorganisation of scrutiny, some of us were trying to do a review into the provision of what I'm calling council services in unadopted areas. It's not about roads. but we didn't quite manage to bring that one to fruition, which I think was a shame, because it's still an issue that we have residents of this county who live in areas where things like public open space and roads and other things have not been adopted, and they are paying full council tax, and they are not getting the services they are paying for because those places have not been adopted. Moving on, there is mention here of the meeting that's coming up on the 24th of February. Worth a watch if you've got time. We're going to be looking at the council's current financial position and hopefully asking one or two pertinent questions there, but nothing too onerous, I don't think. And we will be attempting to put together some lessons learned to pass on to our successors. Whilst I'm on that, it would be remiss of me not to thank the officers in democratic services who have supported Scrutiny over the years. They have been invaluable, absolutely invaluable to what Scrutiny has done. And in particular, I will name check one of them, James Edmonds, who has been the Scrutiny officer for as long as I can remember at the County Council, and has done a great job. I first came across James in, I think, 2001, maybe 2002, at what we then had, some council will remember, would be neighbourhood committees served by the county council. They even had a budget back in those days, and James was the committee clerk for the Corby area committee, as it was called, and that was when we first met, and so we've come across each other several times over the years. So thank you, James. And finally, Scrutiny is an underused tool, I think, in local government. It has great potential, and I think many parts of local government have still not got to grips with Scrutiny and how it should work. And that's perhaps after, what is it, about 20 years of, nearly 20 years of the existence of Scrutiny. So challenge for the future, make the best of Scrutiny. It is something that can work well for the executive and for backbench councillors too. And I move the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stamborough. Can I invite Councillor Victoria Perry to second the report?
Thank you, Chair. Very pleased to second the report, and just want to echo thank you to the officers in democratic services. James, on many occasions, has found words for us when we haven't been able to quite find the right ones ourselves, and that's been immeasurably helpful. And I've really enjoyed working with opposition colleagues, and I think it just shows that Scrutiny isn't political, and when you take that out of it and you have a common purpose, which is to do what we're elected to do, which is to scrutinise the public purse, then actually it works very well. So thank you to my colleagues.
Thank you. I'll now open it up. I've got Councillor Jane Birch.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I'd like to just echo and re-emphasise some of the things that have been said, because I've learnt how Scrutiny can make a difference. I've been a member of Scrutiny since 2017, and in 2018, Mick was appointed as he was a opposition member, was appointed to chair overview and Scrutiny, and the progress that was made with the finance was absolutely transformational. And the process, I believe, became more trusted by the public and is more accessible. Because we worked in a cross-party way, we were collaborative. It was a safe place to air views, to discuss things. And I think that's where the real benefit of Scrutiny is. And I believe it did play a very important part in stabilising the finances, giving people that critical friends viewpoint. It's often difficult to see things when you're wrapped up in them. And I think Scrutiny has offered that objectivity on many occasions. And I think the value of appointing an opposition member is acknowledged as good practice. After all, I don't think marking your own homework has ever been a very good method of assessment. And if there's an example of good practice, which should be transferred to the new authorities, and based on my experience as a member of Overview and Scrutiny since 2017, and for the past 10 months as chair of Overview and Scrutiny for West Northants, I would really, really recommend that the chair of Overview and Scrutiny is taken by an opposition member. It makes the whole procedure more democratic, it's more open, and it instills public confidence. So I think we have huge amounts to learn from the success of this, and that learning shouldn't be lost as we transfer to this procedure, this ability to look at what's going on in the council from every aspect. This shouldn't be lost as we move to the new authorities. So if that's my sort of last word on that, it's, please look at what has happened. Mick has been incredible. He's brought a completely new way of working, and I think that should be continued. It's a valuable thing that we've discovered, and I'd be very, very sad if it didn't have a chance to live on further in the new unitaries. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hakewill.
Thank you, Chairman. Really, Jane has made some excellent points there. Completely agree with that change. Indeed, was part of it. Just really to say thank you to Julie Davenport, because the two of us have sat there as vice chairs. Mick, I've known for a very long time, and the scrutiny at Kettering and now Northants, he has done an amazing job. And equally, not anywhere near as far back as Councillor Stanborough can say, and I know you shouldn't name tag officers in that way, but James Edmonds has been the epitome of a great officer supporting scrutiny over many years, certainly from when I first started in 2013, not to forget Barbell, who I think has literally gone north into a new job. So really just to confer and confirm what colleagues have already said, express my thanks to the officers over that time, and of course history will tell. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to say over the years that I've been a county councillor, I've attended lots of scrutiny meetings and taken part, and how much I enjoy scrutiny. I think it's one of the things that a backbench councillor can do, and to make an input into the county council. I'd like to say a special thanks to Mick. When I attended the scrutiny meetings, I thought he chaired them brilliantly. He knows so much about scrutiny, and especially about the finance angle, and that was very, very interesting. And I also want to say, Mr. Chairman, that when the decision was taken that scrutiny would be given to opposition councillors, I thought that was a brilliant move. I thought that was one of the best moves that this county council had made, and I just felt that was the right way to go about it. I take Councillor Jane Birch's opinion. I hope that when the new unitary is fully in business, that they don't do what they done on the borough council by making the administration the chair of the scrutiny committee. I hope that it will always go out to opposition councillors to chair the meetings, because that's the proper way to do it, and that's the right way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Got Councillor Scott just come in.
Thank you, Chair. I'd certainly like to pay tribute to Mick Scrimshaw for the way in which he came into the role of chairing scrutiny and the respect he's gained as a result of that. Certainly as leader of the opposition, there'd often be occasions when Mick and I would have strong words about different things, but Mick was very certain in his view of how scrutiny should be dealt with, and that it should be non-political, and that's the way it always should be. I think there were some regrets in the course of the 3 years, and especially in the sort of time limits on not being able to scrutinise a number of the issues that they wanted to, a number of the issues we would have done had we remained under the previous scrutiny arrangements. But I guess time didn't and the pace at which we needed to move didn't really allow for that. I trust that in the future, the unitaries will adopt the scheme that we've adopted in the last few years and carry that forward. As indeed, as Victoria said, it is a non-political group. It works well because it's non-political, and it gets the cooperation of all those involved. And I'd like to end by thanking all those members, all those officers, and others from outside the organisation that have contributed to the debates within Scrutiny, and to thank very much those officers that have serviced Scrutiny over the years, and Jim Akewell outlined the main individuals within that. So thank you very much to all of them.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. That's the last speaker I've got. So, Councillor Stambra, do you wish to reply in any of those matters?
Not specifically, other than to say it takes a special kind of person to lead Scrutiny, and whether they're from the controlling group or an opposition group, that's for others to decide. But I would certainly support the view that someone from an opposition group to the controlling group would probably be the better choice. Just want to say one final thing. The final two sentences of our report, I think, sum it up perfectly. The results achieved by overview and scrutiny have inevitably varied over time. The motivation for doing it has always been to support democracy at the council and to make a difference for the residents of Northamptonshire. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I ask Council to note the report, and if they're all happy to accept that?
Agreed.
Thank you. Are there any dissenters or abstainers? No? Excellent. So we're on to motions now. So we've got the motion submitted by Councillor Bob Scott, and I'll invite him to propose his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, fellow councillors, since the publication of the Colour report, which we called for, and the introduction of the commissioners, which we also called for, we've all been on a journey involving rectifying the way this council operated and recovering the financial meltdown. Under the direction of the commissioners and the dedicated staff at all levels, the meltdown has been reversed, thankfully. Governance has been restored and scrutiny improved. We know that making meetings accessible to the public helps to gain public trust, and a number of people have spoken about that today. We know that a number of members of the public watch our meetings on social media, and that helps to get our messages out. We know that pre-scrutiny of new initiatives is an important part of due diligence, and sadly, because of time constraints in recent times, we haven't been able to do a lot of that. We have learned that the Chinese wall we had in highways impacted on monitoring contracts, and that contract monitoring and reviews need to take place in-house. Highways was not good practice, and as we said at the time, it was created. Contract management, monitoring and reviews need to take place in-house and at a professional distance from the provider. Valuing and respecting staff, especially when they are under pressure, and reflecting that in terms and conditions, training, career opportunities, etc., is another lesson we've learned. We've learned that to achieve positive change, we need to have a dominant culture, but that it must also be reflective and enabling, that bullying is not an acceptable way and should be dealt with swiftly if and when it occurs. All of these and more are lessons we've learned, and there's no shame in recognising that we've learned lessons, and the sharing of these with others in the knowledge-driven economy is, I believe, a sign of strength. So I ask you to support this motion, one that talks about sharing our experiences as the new councils move forward, sharing the lessons we've learned. And a lot of the talk today has been talking about sharing those lessons in one form or another. So I ask you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Can I ask Councillor Danielle Stone to second the motion?
Thank you very much. We have heard a lot today about the journey we've been on, and for me, it isn't about where we've arrived, but it's about our preparedness for the onward journey as well. And I'm sure you would all agree with that. And we've also heard today about how important it is to build trust and to be open and transparent. So I think being able to say what the lessons are that we've learned is really important. And I think it's really important to leave that as a legacy for the new unitary authorities. So I totally endorse everything Councillor Scott has just said, but I also want to underline what was said in relation to the overview and scrutiny report. It is not insignificant that Mick became and was an absolutely brilliant chair of scrutiny, and he was able to do that really well, untrammeled by having to respond to the administration. He was free from that because he was an opposition councillor. I think the strength added to that was having cross-party vice chairs, and it has worked extraordinarily well. For me, that is such an important lesson to learn. And I think it's something that we need to underline to our successor authorities. And I would add to that, that we need to have opposition chairing the corporate parenting board. By the same token, it's such an important service, such an important governance arrangement for our most vulnerable children, that the chair of that, I think we ought to follow the same model as we developed here for overview and scrutiny. I have said many, many, many times that having a balanced budget is great, but what we need to know is also the budget gaps, because if we don't know what the budget gaps are, we can't address them. So I think it's really, really important that we look at what we need as well as what we've got. We don't just cut our cloth to suit whatever. We've got to make the money that we need to provide really, really good services. So we need some honesty around what the need actually is and what those budget gaps are. I think that should be pretty clear. I've got a horrible suspicion that some of the failure around children's services weren't the frontline staff at all. It was around all the enabling services not being satisfactory. And I think that we need to look at all our enabling services, would be the lesson I suggest, and ask them to help us lift our services out of silo working, because that would be adding strength to each service. It is really, really obvious, isn't it, that early help and prevention should be #1 priority for all our services. We don't want to be firefighting and spending loads and loads of money at the rough end of things. We want to get to people, we want to get to children, we want to offer services way before urgent emergency support and help is needed. So that is one of the lessons, isn't it? You cut early years and help and preventative services at our peril. I think all those...
You've muted yourself, Councillor Stone.
No, somebody else muted me, I think. They've been hard won, and I would hate to lose them. And I think it would be really great to be able to pass those on as lessons and legacies from this authority to our successors. I second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to inform Council that most of you should have received an amendment that was received in good time. So can I invite Councillor Elizabeth Dine to propose the amendment, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to make this brief. Nobody disagrees with good governance and transparency. But then we go to this list, which we feel misrepresents the situation. The organisation has tackled many of those areas that you have put in the list. The proof of that tackling is in our results, which we have shared with you today. As far as the unitaries are concerned, you mentioned you wish to recommend these specific lessons. Your points are matters for the executive of the new councils and not at full council. You can share and debate those lessons there with our colleagues and decide which ones people wish to keep in and keep out, but this is not for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Andre Gonzalez de Savage to second the motion, please, or the amendment, sorry.
Chairman, I'm very happy to second the amendment and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. So we will now, so firstly, Councillor Scott, I wonder if you're prepared to accept the amendment as a substantive motion.
No, Chair, I'm not.
Okay, thank you. So we're now speaking on the amendment, and so the normal opportunity to debate that after acceptance or not of that. So I've been notified in advance Councillor Meredith wishes to speak. Is that correct?
No, I don't want to speak on the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davenport. Some of these hands may have gone up before you had the amendment, so no, okay. Councillor Hakewill.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose one of the things one won't miss are motions, amendments, and some of the stuff that anyone watching this would think, why would I want to get involved with all of that? But the forum I really wanted to make the point on was that we are all sitting here in a virtual environment. And part of what Bob Scott's motion was about openness, transparency, and the ability of the community to see us. We are categorically, it seems, going into elections on May the 6th. Virtual meetings or hybrids, and by the way, Chairman, I don't need an electric point. I have got my 3-pin plug. Hybrid meetings whereby people who do not have the wherewithal, ability or ease to get into a physical room to be part of a council and part of the community that they represent. And in fact, if they can't, they are representing a part of the community that probably is underrepresented. That whichever way we look at it, and anyone who is listening and anyone who watches, that we should, in the spirit of the original motion, actually make sure that virtual does not die on the 5th of May or whenever it is, but that we continue to do that. There are people in this room who have clearly more authority than me to pursue that, but very much so. I liked what Bob Scott put in his motion, that should happen. And the second aspect, and I accept Councillor Bowen's point, it is for the new authorities, but hopefully some of us will go there. This process that you have to put questions in to people who are paid a good whack to be on cabinets and have the answers days in advance. You know, that should be 4 o'clock the day before a meeting. And those who are tasked, elected and get put into positions of authority should have the answers without having to get an officer to write them for them. So virtual, let's keep it going. Days notice, engagement with the community, reduce that timescale so people have time to read the papers and ask some good questions. Chairman, I've no idea where we go with all these motions and amendments, but I wanted to make the point.
Thank you. Well, hopefully I've got a handle on it. Councillor Scott, did you want, we've got no other people with a hand up, so Councillor Scott, did you want to make any comments in response?
Yes, Chair. Thank you for those that have spoken. The motion doesn't require this council to do anything other than recommend to share the lessons and recommend the lessons. So it's not making decisions for the unitaries at all. It would go to the unitaries, they'd make up whatever decision they wanted to make. The main point or one of the main points is, as Jim suggested, that I'd said, about the openness and transparency and the ability for members of the public to be able to log in and hear what's being said and keep abreast of what the council is doing, whatever council it is. And I mean, there's been great interest on that recently, hasn't there? Because even from a parish council, where the debates have been quite hot and taken with great interest. Lizzie made some points about the motion really misinterpreting a number of things. It didn't make any points at all about where is it misinterpreting things. And if we're going on proof, then there is none there, not being put forward. And this is a council that's supposed to be going on what the proof is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, did you want to respond? Anything before I put the amendment? While you're doing that, apparently 3,500 people watched Handforth. Perhaps they should watch us to see how it's done.
Just very quick, good exercise. I've just got a couple of points. The lessons that you put down there, they're your lessons, okay? So they're not everybody's lessons and they're your interpretation. So you are perfectly at liberty to have your views, but obviously you need to reflect those views at the right occasion, and this is not the right occasion to debate it. Second of all, I didn't say misinterpret, I said misrepresent, which is actually completely different. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As obviously the proposer doesn't want to accept the amendment, I think it's best to launch a poll on this rather than do by acclamation, so that it's clear for everybody. So the Democratic Services will launch a poll. You will have 20 seconds to respond and submit your answer when it appears on screen.
Polling's launched now. Councillors will have 20 seconds to cast their votes. We've got 25 councillors in favour of the amendment, 11 against and no abstentions, so that's carried.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know if people heard that. I think it's 25 in favour of the amendment and 11 against, no abstentions. So the amendment is carried. So that now becomes the substantive motion. Would anybody like to speak on the substantive motion? I did have some names in advance, but obviously, if you're not... Okay, so we'll ask council, therefore, if it accepts the motion. I'll do this by acclamation as we've got it as now so substantive. Can I ask councillors if they're prepared to accept the motion, please?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed. And anybody against? So we've got one, two, we've got some. Have you got these?
See 5 hands.
So we've got 5 hands on the screen. We've got them all, 6, we've got them all up. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. So now we move on to the next motion, which is submitted by Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we thought it was really important today to put a motion to council to acknowledge the contribution of all of our staff over the past few years. What can we say about our staff? Well, firstly, a lot of what has been said today, the golden thread through everything, has been our staff that have helped carry us through to where we are today. For me as leader, it's personally been an incredible honour to be the leader and to work with everybody in here. And when I think of our staff, I think back to some of the more darker, more challenging days when I first stood up in front of everybody in the atrium, and there were rows and rows of faces and people that had worked for the authority that were rightly concerned about where we are. And obviously I took my role seriously, but that really highlighted the point to me that this involves a lot of people, not only just through the services that we deliver, but the people that work, that are the lifeblood of the authority. And we've got to do our very best on behalf of them. And they were a part, and I put it to them, that they were a part of the solution, a part of the mechanism to move things on, to improve services, to put the finances back, and to do everything else we've done over those last 3 years. And we've talked about it today already. The challenges have been immense, not only the finances, but we delivered the Children's Trust. Staff have come back to us from highways, from LGSS, the transformation work in adults, and of course the work delivering business as usual while we've been dealing with this massive pandemic. And the forefront of the response, yes, we can talk about the high level leaders, Teresa and the team, but it's been the staff that have delivered, the staff that have delivered on the promises, on the commitment that we all made. And that has been the golden thread that has ran through everything that has been before us over the last few years into getting us to where we are today, which is a good place as we transfer into unitaries. We've talked about the discipline, the culture, and everything else that has been put in place from the top. We talk about Teresa, Barry, Ivana, Kathy, the top people that have come in. But, it's not all been about them. It's been about people like Gary that lets us in the gate at One Angel Square when we come in. Masimba, one of the frontline social workers that I've always had a chat to and enjoyed a little conversation in the corridor when I've been in here. Becky in emergency planning, Rob, one of the other social workers, Jenny, one of the other people, and Matt, one of the caretakers, and all the people on the front line delivering our services. So I think it's right that one of the last things that this council does is acknowledge and thank the staff who have been immense. And I put it on, I've already recorded my video for the closing down thing, and I said about my heartfelt thanks to everybody, because, and we talked about it today, we've all given our best. And the staff have given everything, and they deserve our heartfelt thanks. So I won't say anything else. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. Councillor Judy Shepherd to second the motion, please. Hopefully the connection's there.
Microphone's not activated.
Yeah, looks like there's a technical problem with Councillor Shepherd. So if Councillor Bowen wants to step in the... Oh, hang on, she's there.
That I did use it. The previous second motion on this moment.
Can't hear it.
Its motion rightly highlights extraordinary commitment of our staff, those recent unprecedented number of times. I'd also reflect over the past 4 years.
We can't hear that, Chair.
Councillor Shepherd, it's very, very crackly and broken up. If we get Councillor Bowen to do it, and perhaps if you dial in again on another line, it might be better, or use the phone and do your bit as a contributor.
Yeah, I'm sure Councillor Golby has said everything that needs to be said, but I'd just like to reiterate our thanks to the team here at One Angel Square. I think you've all been absolutely fantastic in what you've had to deal with and challenges with COVID, etc. And I'm sure Councillor Shepherd wanted to say just that. So yeah, really, really heartfelt thanks.
Thank you. I've had a few names notified in advance wishing to speak. Councillor Eales, Gareth Eales. No. Councillor McGee. No. Councillor Stamborough.
Thank you very much, Chair.
I know you're there.
Wasn't really expecting to be first on the list, but I'll go. Yeah, so absolutely, it's absolutely right. As councillors, we should acknowledge the contribution of the staff at Northamptonshire County Council, because it is they who have delivered everything that the council has delivered over the years, and everything that the council has delivered in the last 3 to 4 years. It's they who have put in place the turnaround in the council's fortunes that Matt referred to in his speech to us earlier. It's they who carry out the policy, and we should be very grateful to them for what they have done. But as has been alluded to earlier, it would be remiss of us, I think, to pretend that everything in the garden's been rosy for the staff of Northamptonshire County Council. They have done what they've done in the face of some immense challenges. Challenges like the withdrawal from national pay bargaining, challenges like mandatory unpaid holidays, challenges like increments not being paid when they expected them to be paid and were told they would be paid, challenges like changes to the sick pay scheme, and challenges like 0 pay increases in some years. So all the more reason we should be grateful to the staff who have stayed around and helped us, because they really deserve our thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stamborough. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Eales does work for Unison and therefore didn't want to speak on the item. Mr. Chairman, the Labour Group are very happy to associate ourselves with this motion. Despite all the pressures listed in the motion, and with many staff working from home with the tasks of childcare, child education, shielding, things like that, it's been very difficult for them, and they've really rose to the challenge. As Chris just said, prior to COVID, the staff morale was very, some of the items which Chris mentioned. But with the COVID crisis, they really stepped up and they did a brilliant job. And so now I'd like to thank all of the staff, wherever they are across the organisation, for all the work they've put in. We've been very grateful. I myself, not as a councillor, but as an individual, have been shielding. I used to get a phone call about every 2 months to see how I was and whether I needed any services. Those are the sorts of things they were carrying out on top of the roles they were carrying out normally. So I wish all the staff well into the future. I hope they're able to fulfil their future, whatever that may be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Shepherd has rejoined us. Do you want to try again, Councillor Shepherd? Sounds like she's there.
I think she might have dropped out again.
No, she may well have dropped out again. Councillor Davenport.
I would like to reiterate what everyone else has said. Our great thanks. However, words are not going to pay their bills, and that has disturbed me quite a lot whilst being a councillor, is that there has been a pay freeze. Well, they've had a pay cut because everything else is going up. Thank you is wonderful. However, it's not going to pay for the additional council tax, the gas, the food, etc. So I think that we could have done better with that.
Thank you. Councillor Gonzalez de Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to endorse the report and just really say over the last 133 years, there clearly have been many staff who've worked tirelessly throughout the organisation and clearly done their very best to ensure that they delivered the policies that were set there by the elected members from whichever party elected them effectively and put those plans together. It must be a very disorientating position to be in as a member of staff, that every 4 years, or perhaps even fewer than that sometimes, there's a whole change of plan. And I have to say that clearly they have adequately worked that through, and brilliantly, in times of great difficulties too. None of those difficulties were ever forecast. No one ever joins an organisation to deal with difficult times, but everyone has to face up to difficult times and also something that they deal with them. And everybody around the table has done that, whether it be political or whether it be an authority member, an employee. I would like to say, Mr. Chairman, that we haven't had a smooth operation for many different reasons over many, many years. And that's because at the end of the day, over the last 133 years, there have been all sorts of opinions, and we clearly are representatives of the public, of the people, and those views are constantly changing. So we're always having to adapt. But I would like to thank one particular member of staff, Mr. Chairman, who I think has kept this authority and in fact the many people of the county well connected, and in fact put himself at tremendous risk sometimes. And that has been Roger Coleman. Mr. Roger Coleman, who the council sergeant has kept absolutely Northamptonshire County Council as the face of the public effectively, and the services there to everyone. He has coped with every political party and every issue that is around, and he has very well adapted to that too. I know he's probably the longest serving member of staff for the County Council also, and has dealt with many different roles, started off with loads of different roles, and has definitely delivered a tremendous front-facing position. So I'd like to thank Mr. Coleman, together with all the other members of our staff who've been tremendous and will go on, hopefully, to join us in the other councils that are coming forward. It's all about the future, but building on a successful past.
Thank you, Councillor. So yes, Roger's been a tremendous servant and invaluable to people in this chair. Councillor Meredith.
Yeah, okay, Chair, thank you. I just want to say my personal thanks, especially to Democratic Services. I think they've been a real benefit to every councillor on the council. When I first joined the council, there was a whole team of Democratic Services. I think there was at least 8 people serving there. It was a whole department that was busy, and over the years we're seeing them cut down now virtually to 3 or 4 people, I think now. And with that, they've managed everything. They've still carried on, got all the minutes out, all the paperwork, and still doing it today. And a wonderful effort by them. So I think they need some sort of recognition and our vote of thanks to them, because without them, we wouldn't be able to operate. So my personal thanks to the Democratic Services team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. I've got Councillor Hakewill.
Councillor Andre de Gonzalez-Savage really took my comments. I wanted to make the same point about Roger. He was always, and one of the first people that I met when I joined in 2013, always willing to help, always happy to chew things over, and you could chew things over. You knew they would go in, but they wouldn't be repeated, as well as all the schools and all the other people that he showed around. So along with everybody else within this motion, totally agree with all the members of staff, but I just wanted to mention Roger. Thank you.
Thank you. And what should be the last contribution, please, from Councillor Naden-Hawley?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to everyone. I'd just like to reiterate everything that the leader has said in this motion, but I'd also like to offer my personal thanks to all the staff I've worked with during the last 5 years, and in particular the team in corporate and community services who, despite the immense pressures of the COVID-19 pandemic, have worked tirelessly for the residents of Northamptonshire. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to have one last go for Councillor Shepherd, who, because she's having problems coming in, and see if she's still there. Hello, Councillor Shepherd. No, looks like that. So we'll have to give up on that. Can I ask?
I'm back.
Yeah, there we are.
Can you hear me?
It's a long way to Malton.
It sure is. I do apologise for earlier, but we've been having a very bad connection here, connectivity. But I would just like to actually add my just my thoughts really about the members of staff over the years. I've been here for 24 of those, and in that time I've actually obviously met quite a few officers. Their work is absolutely outstanding over the years, and I'd just like to actually just add my thanks to them for what they have done. We must not forget that we have a long and proud history here, beginning with the Red Earl Spencer, and that was in 1889, and his picture hangs behind the chair in the county in the council hall, he has, I'm sure the actual chamber itself has been born witness to many historic and extraordinary political occasions. Are you hearing me all right?
Yes, yeah.
Good, that's good. When we changed the new scrutiny system, I do recall I was invited by the Royal College of Gynecologists and Obstetricians to speak on the Northamptonshire County Council's great success, as we were held in high regard as an exemplar of good practice of scrutiny. And it was a great honour to me to go and do that, and also being chairman of the council in 2009, again in 2010. And this gave me this unique opportunity of meeting and rewarding a great member of our very special staff and seeing behind the scenes and witnessing the absolute and unwavering dedication and professionalism of those staff. Just finally, I'd just like to just sort of say, I know that a lot of our staff have been recognised through the Rose of the Shires Awards, and you know, I think over 300 citizens actually have been recognised by that now, or some having have received their awards already. But to me, all of our officers and staff richly deserve to be awarded for their many years of exceptional commitment to this remarkable county council, and I thank them all.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Can I ask Councillor Golby to any response?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the comments by everybody. And just to say, you know, we have tried to do what we can for staff over the last 2 or 3 years, and I have to say the Chief Exec has always been fighting for better outcomes for staff in terms of pay rises, etc. And we did manage a 4% pay rise last year, so that does need to be recognised. But again, everybody was right on the nose in terms of all the commitment and comments about the staff, and we've all got stories of the people we know. And I realise I mentioned some names of people that there are of course hundreds, if not thousands, of people that have been the lifeblood of this this authority. So just to finish off by saying I wish everybody well for the future, and I hope we can all support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask if council accepts the motion, please? I'll just do this by acclamation.
Aye.
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 Anyone against or abstaining? Hopefully it's unanimous. Okay, thank you. So move on to the next motion C, submitted by Councillor Ian Morris. Can I ask him to propose his motion, please?
Thank you very much, Chair, for the chance to propose this motion. And very much like the previous motion, it is really all about thanking the people in the county that have worked so hard, particularly over the last year, in the response to the COVID crisis, which has certainly taken the country and the county by storm and has been unprecedented in history. So this is why we're bringing this motion. I would like to point out that I think there is a slight error in the motion, in that in the first line, it should say this council would like to thank all the key workers and volunteers of Northamptonshire. In my copy, that the thank is missing. So if I could add that to the motion, I would be very grateful. In terms of who we're thanking here, key workers, well, there are many key workers that have helped with this crisis over the last year. You've got social workers in adults and children's care who have worked tirelessly throughout this crisis, often in what you could describe as dangerous circumstances, let's be honest, in light of the COVID crisis, particularly in the early days when the PPE and things like that weren't so readily available. We also have care home staff who have worked tirelessly to try and protect those in their care, many of whom haven't been able to see their relatives for a year, or possibly even, or a bit less, but certainly some of them haven't seen their relatives for a year, and they've been cared for very well in their environment. In terms of volunteers, where do we start really? That is an amazing story. Thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of people have volunteered across this county to help with simple things or more complex things, taking people to the doctor, collecting their prescriptions, making sure people have got food, simply looking after vulnerable people in the community who haven't been able to leave their homes or to have human contact with people. It has been really heartwarming to see. And this is why this motion is here, because without them, I think the response in the county from the volunteers and from our key workers, we wouldn't be our response has been amazing in this county in terms of things like the vaccination, in terms of the messaging, in terms of, working together across every party, every walk of life to make sure that we're as safe as we can be in this county. And we can only thank them for that help. And therefore, I put this motion before you, Chair, and wait for some comments from fellow councillors. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Can I ask Councillor Adam Brown to second the motion, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief. I would like to reiterate what Councillor Morris and others speaking to the last motion have said. But I'd like to pay particular tribute to staff at Northampton General Hospital, particularly those on the community midwife team and those working in the maternity services who have been so fantastic for my wife and I over the past few weeks. Also, all the members of staff working in the oncology department and other vital frontline services that, although haven't been directly in the front line of COVID, have still had that hanging over their heads when they're going about their daily work to save lives and to help those most in need. I'd also just like to pay tribute to the amazing volunteers throughout my division of Bugbrook. Teams of volunteers in villages such as Kislingbury, Harpole, Blisworth, Milton Malta, and so many others that I could mention. People who, without a penny of recompense, have gone around their local communities, helping those most in need, kept their ears to the ground and made sure that nobody has to suffer unduly in these most difficult of times. They deserve our highest praise, and I commend this motion to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I had a number of people indicating beforehand to speak. Councillor Stanborough, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I would absolutely like to support this motion. It's absolutely right. Perhaps that the final thing we do is to recognise the key workers and volunteers around Northamptonshire who make the county tick, basically. That's what they do. And so happy to support. I'd just like to mention two groups who I think are worthy of highlighting. Number one is the volunteers that work in our libraries, who have done a fantastic job in the library service over the past couple of years, especially those in the community managed libraries. They have enabled us to keep the library service going, and I think they are worthy of some praise. And finally, the unpaid carers across the county and indeed across the country who look after loved ones, be they children, be they parents, be they siblings, be they friends. They do an absolutely fantastic job. They are worthy of recognition, and we should talk about them today as well. So thank you very much.
You, Councillor Stone, did you wish to speak? No. Councillor McGee? No. Okay. Councillor Hakewill.
Just like to associate myself, Chairman, with those previous comments and appreciate the leader coming forward with that motion. Certainly, I didn't use WhatsApp before all this happened, and suddenly found myself, along with many others, volunteering with WhatsApp messages flying around, and it's brought communities together very much so. I'd also like to make the point about our libraries, many of whom have become volunteers out of the County Council umbrella over these past few years. But perhaps equally and most of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Ian Morris. He has shown amazing leadership, managing the weekly or bi-weekly briefings, and enabled myself, and I'm sure many others, to communicate what's been going on to all those volunteers, what the rules are, what people should and shouldn't perhaps be doing. But I think Ian must have spent enormous number of hours. So whilst I accept he has put this motion forward, I also think that he should bear some praise within it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chohan.
I just wanted to quickly say, echo everything that all the other councillors have put forward, but today is actually a thumbs up for early years. I work in early years, and just wanted to say, if any councillors do get a chance, there's all kinds of stuff going on social media, but put a thumbs up, take a selfie and post it on your social media pages, because actually throughout this whole pandemic, especially during this lockdown, the nurseries have been open, and we have had early years have really stepped up alongside all the other countless volunteers as well. So just wanted to make that quick point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. A number of the points have been made. And following the last speaker, yeah, I too would like to highlight a number of things, one of them being the early years, where I think they've been doing incredible work, certainly around Corby, from what I know. The rest of the county, I haven't been able to keep in touch with a lot. But the other area also is those delivering the food banks. I mean, they've been absolutely essential, absolutely marvellous in coming together and increasing the amount of food they've had to get to feed the many more people that have found it very difficult in these times. Also, those delivering medication, absolutely essential to a number of our members of the public, especially the elderly. And also, lastly, those communicating with mainly elderly single people and making sure they're okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davenport.
Yes, I'd like obviously to reiterate everything that people have said, but also I must say about our amazing group in Far Cotton and Delapre. All of the residents have been incredible. And we started off with 3 of us in a group. I think the group's nearly 2,000 now on Facebook. But we had 80 volunteers who were going out shopping for everyone that was isolated, prescriptions. And then we were delivering 135 hot and cold meals a day to people that either couldn't afford it or, you know, couldn't get out to get food. About 50 boxes of food every week to people that couldn't afford it. It's been phenomenal. And that includes the Southern Quarter Development Corporation as well. They joined in and we were a big team together. But I tell you, who I think are real legends are the parents, homeschooling. How do you do that? You know, you're working full time and then you've got to try and homeschool 2 or 3 children. So I think they've been amazing also. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rumans.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly, we're very much in a mood to reiterate, and I'd just like to reiterate all the people that have reiterated other people that have reiterated other people. But on a more serious point, I actually want to talk about 2 people that I know that are friends of mine that give us a more specific picture of all these brilliant people that we're talking about. They're called Gemma Harris and Tyler Bennett, and they are 2 people that throughout all of the lockdowns have been working full time like normal, but they stepped up to volunteer for the Red Cross. And they asked me to get involved at one point in helping deliver some of the county council leaflets and also distributing food to families that needed it and helping do shopping for people that were shielding and isolating and so on and so forth. And really, I was just taken aback by the ability of human beings when at the hardest times, they will step up and go to the furthest lengths for no pay, for no gain, simply to help other human beings. And I think, I guess one of the things throughout this crisis is it's really reiterated, get the word in again, to me, that actually most people out there are good. and the bad is the minority.
Thank you. And the final contribution for this, please, from Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. It's nice to be the last one to speak on this.
But not the least.
Yeah. There's two sections of the community that I'd like to really thank, which had an effect on myself personally. I want to speak about Restore. Is an organisation that delivers food parcels throughout Northampton or Northamptonshire, and we done a food poverty visit to them to find out what they do. And when I see the amount of work they done and the people coming in and collecting the food parcels, it had a really bad effect on me. It really affected me to see that these poor people was coming in and asking for food so they could feed their families. And you know, my thanks to all them workers with it, Restore, who was doing that most wonderful job, and it was really brilliant. And the other organisation I want to speak about is when I was in hospital and I thought my end of my life was coming, and I said to the consultant there, I said, am I dying? I asked him the question because I was so ill. And he turned around to me and said, no, not if I can help it. And it was amazing. It's the first time really that I'd been proper in hospital to see how much work, right down from the healthcare workers, right down to the nurses, right down to the consultants. And I was in a ward which was a COVID ward. And to see how they was coping, it was tremendous, and it had a tremendous effect to me. In the end, the consultant come up to me and he said, I know that you're in trouble. He said, but we got one last thing we can do, and we can give you the strongest antibiotics that we've got. And thankfully they worked. But just see how they was under pressure and what they done for us. And it was a broad spectrum of people. It was people from Eastern European, people from Pakistan and Bangladesh, and it was fantastic. And it had a lasting effect on me. And I'd just really like to thank everybody in that health service who's working with COVID patients. If you've never been in a COVID ward, you don't really know what goes on, because you're really not allowed in there. You have no visitors or anything. And it's a special thanks for me. And they all knew that I was a county councillor, and they done everything to save my life and brought me round. And, you know, there's no words can say how much I appreciate it. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing my own thing, but it was so emotional for me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very understandable, Councillor Meredith, and something none of us want to go through. And as a governor at the other hospital, Kettering General, I can fully vouch for what the staff and the volunteers do there as well. Thank you for that. Councillor Morris, would you like to respond to comments?
Thank you. Rather than responding to all those individual comments, because they're all referring to their own individual experiences, which of course we've all shared over the last year. So I thank them for their input. I mean, I think I would sum it up very much by saying kindness and compassion of the people of Northamptonshire has been quite overwhelming, really. Whether they be volunteers or key workers. And we just need to mark this moment as the last thing that we do as a council and say thank you very much to them for everything they've done and will continue to do, because we are some way off from this crisis being over, and we will be leaning on our volunteers and key workers for quite some time to come. So we need to make sure that they are aware of our gratitude. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I ask Council if it accepts the motion just by acclamation?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Anyone against or abstaining? I think that's unanimous. Hopefully it is. Thank you. Nearly there. Just a couple of things, members. Item 14, urgent business. I have had a request from Councillor Fiona Baker to address the meeting.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just would like to endorse all the comments that have gone on before about thanking people. And obviously my heartfelt thanks go to every single person in the children's team. They have done a sterling job. But first of all, I just wanted to say that I think we have overlooked a slight bit the fact of the work that our schools and teachers have done during this time. Right from the very beginning, they were open for key workers and our vulnerable children. And they have continued to do that throughout all of this time, taking in more and more children and doing online lessons for those who were shielding or working from home. I'm getting to my point, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. My point is for business, that in conjunction with Teresa Grant, our Chief Executive, and Barry Scarr, our Finance Director, we have awarded a grant to schools that amounts to £24.91 per pupil for all maintained nurseries, all primaries and all secondary schools to help their budgets because of the amount of expense that they've had to go through to deal with the COVID situation. And our heartfelt thanks go out to all of those people working in schools because they've done their best to look after our children. And that's what's most important. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I'm sure the schools will welcome that greatly. So that's it. I have no exempt items except, sorry, apologies. Councillor Auger has got his hand up. I'm not sure what for.
Thank you, Chair. Do we know roughly how much that equates to? What the budget is on that spend, please?
£3 million coming out of our COVID funding.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you. As we get to the end, I think on a personal level, I'd like to thank all the members for their contributions and their hard work and friendship over the 4 year, well, for me, 12 years, but the 4-year term, those who are here now. There's been a lot of camaraderie and close relationships. I'd add my personal thanks to all the staff. I mentioned the pensions department who I worked with closely before, and I'd like to thank them, but particularly the democratic services, without whom the members wouldn't be able to fulfil their duties. I know that Paul Hanson, James Edmonds and Jenny, it was Rendell, now Daniels, have been here, I think, all my time here. So, and James in particular put up with the strictures of the budget scrutiny process and produced copious, accurate paperwork in no time at all. And I think, and scrutiny wouldn't have been able to do their function without him. So I'd like to thank them for their work. And obviously they have the job of dealing with the public who want to access these meetings. So I'd like to propose a vote of thanks to them. I mentioned Lucy Whiteman earlier on. I'd like to remind councillors of the close down arrangements that are coming, and more will be coming out about that. So now to copy the words of Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, now is the time to say goodbye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Chair. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Hi,
Well
Chair.
done,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Adios.
Bye.